create. Do it. Even if you're not in the mood to do it, just do it. Always keep a pen and paper by you. Write something down. Don't be lazy. Don't be somebody who 10 years from now just says, oh, man, I always wanted to draw, but, never did it. Or I always wanted to play guitar. I got a friend right now who she has an acoustic guitar, wants to play all the time. Every time she goes to a show, it's like, I want to play. She got an acoustic guitar, never ends up playing. A year and a half later, I'm like, come on, you're not gonna. It's not gonna magically happen. You have to sit down and actually do it. And finally, after 3 years, she's sitting down and learning her chords. Like, all right, let's do it. I'm like, see, you just lost 3 years though, But now you're on it. Better late than never. But create. Just you have to do it. Even if it's, drawing until till it's bad till it gets good, or it always takes 2 years to do something. To go from 0 to 3, in order to get to that 10. And I'm nowhere near where I'd like to be as a guitar player, but I just keep pushing and hopefully I'll get there eventually.
Welcome to Get After It. My name is John Kay, and I am a professional musician, record producer, and lifestyle entrepreneur. In each episode of Get After It, I talk with an inspiring person with a powerful message to help you discover how to realize your true potential and become your most authentic self through positive intention and purposeful action. I'm truly grateful to those of you listening right now. So without further ado, let's get after it. Danny Methric is in the house.
What's happening, John Kay? How are you?
Everything. Hey, we both are drinking, so let's go ahead and cheers, man, because this is actually the first time we've ever hung out, and it's not as though we're old friends or anything. Hold on 1 second.
But we will be by the end of this interview.
Either that or we'll be sworn enemies. We're going to find out. No, just background real quick. I have been playing such as you have in the Detroit music community since I was 13, so 22 years now, all right? And, it's such a tight-knit community. People know, everyone knows everyone knows who the power players are and all this stuff. And the Mugs is a band name that got tossed around tons in the rock community, tons in the circle. You guys, were doing very, very well, blowing up, influencing and impressing other local musicians and whatnot, but I'd never seen you live. I'd never even really listened to you, because I'm not really into blues rock, you know what I mean? But the respect, and the how do I want to say this? The respect and the loftiness with which your band name and your names as musicians and your music was evident everywhere. Okay, so when I went to, and I mentioned this on the podcast before, I went to a booze and schmooze at Ink Addicts facility out in Ferndale. Me and my queen, we left and then went to Public House to have a nightcap basically before going home. I run into you at the bar and I recognized you, and I'm like, you know what? Hey, man, let me introduce myself, because I'm going to be starting this podcast soon, and this is a guy that I want to talk to, and it's just so fortunate that I ended up there and sat next to you at the bar, and we hit it off, and it just I was like, I need to talk to this guy, because I know you got stories. You know what I mean? I know you got stories, because you've been on a wild ride.
I have been, actually. It's kind of one of the more bizarre rides I can recollect. I never thought the Mugs trajectory would just, it always kind of stays in the same place. It never gets any higher, never gets any lower. But we've seen some amazing things from national TV to, our playing Buscemi's in our first couple gigs. And
Buscemi's, well,
the Sub place.
Oh,
Submarine
right.
Sandwiches, me and Tone's first gig.
Right on.
Yeah, oh, God.
So, okay, to that point, you talk about first gig. Take us back. We're going to go way, way back.
Sure. Let's start from the beginning.
When you're a kid. Talk about where you grew up, the socioeconomic climate that you grew up in. What was your home? What was it like in the home, and take us to the point when you decided that you wanted to pursue music as a career and become a professional musician.
Right on. Good question, actually. I was always a musically inclined kid. I was really smart in school. And I come from a family of 10 aunts and uncles, and they would always get wasted, in the basement. And my Uncle Paul, who unfortunately just died about a month ago.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
I know. And it's got me to recollect, how Uncle Paul kind of shaped my, love for the guitar. He would bring his acoustic guitar out, and all the boys, my uncles, Uncle Manny, my dad, Danny, Uncle John, Uncle Al.
Wait, are you a Danny Jr.?
I'm a Danny Jr.
I'm a John Jr. Right on.
Right
man.
on. Yes, I know. See, juniors. I know. People always ask me. And, Uncle Paul would be singing songs. He had a beautiful voice, sang like Roy Orbison, and I was always enamored with, the sound of the acoustic guitar. And, granted, I'm like 5, 6 years old. My uncles are getting wasted. And, it's like 11 o'clock at night. Hey, bring Dan out, And, they would try and get me to sing harmonies with them. Nice. And I loved the aesthetic. And they would always play the Beatles. I'm saying this is probably like 1980. I'm probably like 7 or 8 years old, or 78 or something like that. And I just got hooked on the Beatles so bad. So my Uncle Paul gave me a couple of Beatle records. And then for my birthday, I got the Red album, which is a greatest hits reard.
The one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yep, exactly. And so I would put on the Red record, it's like had Hard Day's Night on it, and, She Loves You, all that stuff. And I'd be dancing around as a little kid and, playing with dominoes. I would set up dominoes. I'm kind of an obsessive compulsive kind of kid.
Ditto.
Yeah, I know. It's a terrible way to live, but...
but it inspires a lot of creativity and different ways of thinking that other people necessarily wouldn't have,
No, I love it. You see the people who like set up dominoes or, I don't want to get off track.
Sure. No, it's okay. No, we're talking. It's good.
Yeah, totally. And I just realized I really, really, the Beatles just knocked me out. I loved music from the earliest of ages. And ultimately it led me to my Uncle Paul saying, all right, well, you like that. Here's the White Album. So he gave me the White Album when I was 10 years old. And that just blew my mind. But I was only 10 years old. I mean, it blew my mind in a bad way. Like, oh, my God, is this the same band? This isn't She Loves You. This isn't Hard Day's Night. And it took me a while, a couple months as a young kid to realize, how great music can sound. The Beatles just did everything for me. And Uncle Paul was one of those guys. And that showed me, you play the chords like this. He wrote them down on a piece of paper when I was like 13 years old. And, all right, Uncle Paul, show me how to write chords, or show me how to play chords. And he showed me, wrote them down for me. But, I started, when I was 16 years old, I started partying, and I never really got an acoustic guitar. I didn't start playing guitar until I was 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took me a long time just to, I was just trying to find myself as a kid. I was an awkward teenager, really smart in school, but very shy. And I, always wanted to play music. I was like, I want to be like Uncle Paul. And finally, when I got to Michigan State, I'm like, all right, I'm picking up an acoustic guitar. My parents got me one, probably the cheapest, coolest guitar. It was like $80 at a pawn shop on Kelly Road. I grew up on the east side of Detroit near Eastland Mall.
Okay.
And
is that mall still there?
It is still there, but oh my
a lot
God,
of them are closing.
You can't even. My neighborhood is unrecognizable now. It's unfortunate because there was like 100 kids in the area. We all, we went to Notre Dame High School, St. Jude grade school, and we would just ride our bikes and we played football, and it was like a safe neighborhood. Now it's probably the worst neighborhood in Detroit.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
The one of the houses next door to me is burned down. 3 of the houses on my block are burned down.
When you say my block, is this where you still live?
No.
I was going to say, okay.
My block that I
you grew up on.
in.
Okay,
yeah.
just making sure.
Oh, it's a shame. But, it was just a beautiful area at the time, and, great families, but it turned into gang territory, unfortunately, recently.
Wow.
But, as far as, the humble beginnings, Tony and I, Tony DiNardo, we were on the football team at Notre Dame.
What position did you play?
Halfback.
Okay. You were a halfback?
Yeah. I was so small.
You're wiry, dude. Oh, my God.
I didn't, I wanted, because I was, I'm a tough kid. We played football all the time in the neighborhood, so I thought that would translate to actual high school football.
Okay.
And then I realized these guys are like workout dudes.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And me and Tony were the smallest guys on the team. We were like both 5'3", which I'm surprised I'm still not 5'3". I thought that, this was in ninth grade. I was 13 years old. And, we met, and because we were the smallest guys on the team, and we were all ran with the same group of friends, we were kind of troublemakers. And I was coming out of my own of being a nerd to, wow, these guys are cool, and they like to fight a lot. Like, the early 80s was a weird time, cruise crash it, go to malls, get in fights, everything was, it was safe fights too.
Sure.
It's like bop, bop,
skirmishes.
Bop, and, yeah, exactly.
Right on.
And Tony was one of the toughest kids ever. And so Tony and I had a nice rapport. Out of the 7 dudes we hung out with, me and Tony had the musical inkling. So one day Tony says, I write poems, I like melodies. And I'm like, I'm just learning guitar, man. This was in the late, or my, 18, 19 years old or 20 when I started playing guitar. And that's kind of how Tony and I, got together with his ideas, meeting my ideas. Sorry, that was a very long-winded
No,
answer.
my podcast. This podcast is long-winded. Don't worry. We went for 2 hours and 2.5 hours last week, so
yeah,
it's all good.
And I can go more in depth, but
so you started your first band at 20, then?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Actually, I mean the impromptu band. It was basically me, Tony, and his first wife, who was just just kind of hanging out at the time. Tony had a Yoko situation going on, but she was very talented.
Been there.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah,
it's so funny, but we learned a lot. I learned my first chords, G, C, D, and I would play them. And Tony's like, I could write a melody over that.
Nice.
So we ended up forming a band called Fat Belly Brown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
An interesting aside. Tony wanted to, it's like, all right, I got a great name for the band. Penetrate.
Oh, wow.
I know. I'm like, Tone, I don't think it's going to work. He's like, think about it. 2 weeks later, I thought about it. I'm like, Tone, not going to work.
Not going to work, man. Sorry. So you grew up in you were in a musical family. You talked about your uncles. What about your folks? Were they supportive of you, getting after music and everything? Or?
Yes, they were, really. My mom particularly was amazing. She knew I was a music fan from the youngest of ages, so I would always get like the records I asked for Christmas, record player. My first 2 guitars, my mom and my stepdad. My parents got divorced in 1980, so but I always saw my dad all the time. But a gentleman named Mike Milne, he was with my mom for 20 years, amazing, and that's another turning point in my musical career. First of all, they got me my first acoustic guitar when I was 20 years old. It was the cheapest. I still have it. And
good.
It's
I still have my first guitar too.
Man, and they got me my first electric guitar too, which unfortunately that is gone. But it was
Sounds like there's a story there, though.
There is a story there. It was a cheap Mexican Stratocaster.
Okay.
It was a white Mexican Strat.
Epiphone or Gibson? Or a Fender, that is.
One of those
Fender,
one of those $150 ones that they had in the early 90s.
Yeah, I have a white Epiphone Strat. That's my first guitar.
Right on. Oh, you see? Oh my God! And this thing played fantastic. And that was my first, and I was just learning, buying a couple pedals and seeing what kind of tone I can get out of them. And,
sure.
But I was a blues fan, and therein lies my stepdad, Mike, who came in and, coming from my dad's side of the family, who was Roy Orbison and Simon and Garfunkel, just playing beautiful.
Soft.
Yeah, soft.
Yeah, they were heartfelt,
Mike turned me on to the blues, and that's how that shook out. He had a cousin, his cousin Jake, and I remember and I'll never forget this. I was 21 years old, and cousin Jake comes over. They're all old hippies. They went to Woodstock. They traveled the country, hitchhiked, in the 60s, back when that was safe and fun to do.
Right, before Ted Bundy.
Yeah, exactly. Before Ted Bundy or, those crazy maniacs. When hitchhiking was cool and fun, you'd just hitchhike from show to show. And cousin Jake comes over and is like, yeah, I heard you're into the blues, you know, because my stepdad Mike was always playing the blues. He's like, well, check these guys out. And he gave me 3 CDs. I still have them by a band called Savoy Brown.
Yeah, okay.
Kim Simmons and Roger Earl and Lonesome Dave. And it blew my mind because it was the blues, which I was just getting into, but it was also progressive. It was very, it was riff oriented. And I already loved Zeppelin. I loved Hendrix, Cream, all that, you know, those bands, they knock me out like they knock everybody out.
You're talking about 3 guitar gods in Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and Hendrix, you know. So.
Exactly. The penultimate. And unfortunately, Savoy Brown, they never achieved heights because they never had a radio hit. And I listened to these records, and I was blown away because I'm like, wow, blues can be so progressive and so, just the riffs can be just something else. It's just something about the English blues that knocks me out. And then shortly after Savoy Brown, I got into Humble Pie. And, man, and then I just ran the gamut. Like, wow, there's all these amazing bands. Captain Beyond, and I just went nuts. Like, wow, I want to form a band that has great riffs but has Beatle-like melodies.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
But because it has to have
you're
a melody.
marrying your 2 loves, is what it is.
Yeah.
You're trying to take what you like the most, you know, that are on not just necessarily opposite sides of the spectrum. They all kind of fall under the quote unquote rock umbrella, but the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, you know, they can't be any different at most points. Does that make sense? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to take this newfound love that you have and marry it with the older love and create something unique unto yourself. I dig that.
You're exactly right. And it's so fascinating how, because I love old blues, you know, the blues from the 30s and 40s.
Sure.
The evolution of blues is...
Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Buddy Guy.
Otis Rush, Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. Oh, my God, they knocked me out. Straight up knocked me out. And it's amazing what, you know, the British guys, you know, Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, they took what those guys were doing and just, you know, made it electric and heavier, but still keeping within the foundation of the blues, but made it a little progressive. It just knocked me out.
Sorry, I'm lighting incense over here.
Yeah, dig it.
Just getting, you know. Anywho,
I'm gonna sip my ginger ale.
Yeah, sure. So, to the point with the blues, when you and Tony formed the Mugs, this is around, you recorded your first demo in October of 2000. When you formed it, and this is right from Wikipedia, actually, it says you and Tony decided to form a more bluesy band than your previous bands. Define more bluesy.
Well, when Fat Belly Brown was around, we were very heavily influenced by Jane's Addiction, Smashing Pumpkins,
Sure,
Nirvana. You know, that was all going on in the early 90s.
Oh
yeah, and Tony was the singer of Fat Belly Brown too. I was too afraid to sing. I just wanted to play guitar. And
that shy, awkward kid.
Yeah, I was that shy nerd. Yep.
In the shadows.
I'm like, I know a couple of licks, you know, blues licks, and I'm just learning. And so Tony had the balls to come up and say, all right, I'm going to sing these tunes. He played bass, like, you know, before his accident, you know.
And we'll get to that.
Yeah, right.
It's an unavoidable topic. We'll get to. Go ahead.
Gotcha. And when I started moving in the blues direction, I'm like, all right, Tone, you know, I like the pop rock stuff, but I'm moving in a blues direction. Tone's like, I'm moving in, you know, Tone loved the blues as much as I did. And I'm like, I want to be like a Detroit's version of ZZ Top or Fleetwood Mac. And Tone's
right
like,
on. That's
great. So we started moving Fat Belly Brown in that direction, and our guitar player, who I still work with, and I'm selling the guys out, but they already know this story anyway.
Sure. No.
Andy and oh God, what was the drummer? It wasn't Todd Wire, but it was the other one. I forgot what his name is. He imploded on stage, so I can't remember.
You had a Brian's Jonestown Massacre moment or something?
No, he had a Spinal Tap moment where he just turned into a puff of smoke. That's what I guess. No, I just kidding. Oh shit, I can't remember his name, but
It's okay. He's not listening anyway.
Yeah, those two actually fought the direction we were going in, and they're like, "Oh, blues rock, that's boring." And they, the drummer didn't like it. Andy wasn't for it either, and so my thing was like, "All right, Tone, I'd like to move in this direction, but these two aren't into it, so let's." Or I just basically broke up the band. Like, all right, Fat Billy Brown's just not working. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm.
You dissolved
I dissolved it.
Yeah, sure.
And then with Tony and I, we went looking for a drummer who wants to fit our vision, and ultimately, it was the easiest way to fire those guys without firing them, because I didn't have to say, "You guys are fired," and we're changing the band. I did it very sneakily and just said, "I'm just dissolving the band," and then a year and a half later, they both said, "Wow, we got fired, and we just didn't realize it."
Yeah.
Because I just took Tony, like, "All right, Tone, we're going in a blues rock direction, man."
Right on.
And I wrote my first bad song. But we got Matt Rost, who he's in the neighborhood here somewhere.
He's in Redford. Yeah, you were mentioning that before we started.
Yeah.
Right on.
Thankfully, he was in the Immortal Winos of Soul. We loved that band, and Matt was an amazing
The Immortal Winos of Soul.
Great band. They were
like a Detroit band name.
Yeah, I know. They did all covers. Great personalities, great dudes. They were kind of like the Detroit Cobras before the Cobras. They were just doing that type of thing, and old obscure covers. And we just met Matt and asked him, should I go with how the Mugs started? Or?
Dude, you talk. Just go. I don't.
I mean, real quick. This is a funny story.
No, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
So we find out that Matt, is looking to play with somebody, and I'm like, "All right, Matt, we're looking to put together this, 3-piece Cream / ZZ Top type band, and this is in the late '90s." Which people weren't really doing that. I'm not calling myself a pioneer or nothing like that.
Backstreet Boys wanted it that way.
Yeah.
And, Britney Spears is getting ready to pop. And
Oh, my God. And the late 90s was such a...
I'm sorry, those headphones are ridiculously uncomfortable for you because you're wearing glasses.
Oh, is that what's going on? I was wondering. No, they're fine.
No, these ladies and gentlemen, we use Vic Firth headphones in Stu Studio here, and they squeeze. Studio. Yeah, it's more of an American Psycho reference. You've seen the movie, right?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
Christian Bale.
This is Studio. And so I did Stu Studio. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, so I originally envisioned the Mugs to be dual guitar, drums, and bass, Sure. And this is, Tone was playing, he's learning John Paul Jones licks, and we were doing that type of thing.
It's a good person to learn licks.
Oh, I know. And Tone was playing it great, too. He picked up the bass as quick as I picked up guitar.
Good.
Somehow we were just lucky to have an affiliation or an affinity to, to play an instrument. I was surprised myself because we're both self-taught. And there was a dude named Graham who's in a band called Tyrone's Power Wheel in the mid-'90s. We loved him so much, great guitar player. And Graham, I'm putting together this blues rock band. You want to be in it? He's like, don't want to do it. Asked a couple other dudes. I'm like, oh, man, no, sorry, it's blues rock. I don't see anything going on with that type of thing. I'm like, oh, man, I had like 2 songs written at the time. And so Matt Rost comes over and to Tony's house. We get together in the basement. I'm like, Matt, I'm really sorry. I want to do like a 4-piece band, but it's not going to happen. No one wants to be the other guitar player. It's just kind of the 3 of us jamming around. He's like, power trio, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, no way. Like you in? He's like, yeah, let's do a power trio. I never considered power trio. I wanted to play rhythm guitar. I didn't want to be the solo guy. I just wanted to write. I just wanted to write and sing, and I was still scared to death to sing at the time.
Sure.
But Matt came in, guns blazing, played his ass off, and we wrote our first couple songs in that session, and they weren't good, but it was a great start. That was the humble beginnings.
So to that point, talk about the responsibility and the weight that's on the shoulders of a lone guitar player in a 3-piece, because frankly, I didn't learn this until my first tour in Europe when I was playing with Coffin Cats, because I'm not a guitarist by trade. I'm a drummer. I've been drumming since I was 2 years old, and I picked up the guitar as a songwriting tool when the band I was playing with my childhood friends at the time, we formed our first band at 8. And you probably know the two guys that I played with, actually.
Yeah.
Dave Malash and John Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we formed our first band at 8, and we were doing a lot of covers and whatnot. And then at 13, we discovered that, hey, our junior high will, sometimes they'll let us perform if we've got, songs and whatnot. So they're like, do you know how to write a song? Do you know how to write a song? I said, I'll try. And so I became the principal songwriter for basically every band I've been in since I was 13. And I picked up the guitar as a songwriting tool. Dave taught me how to make a power chord, and then I learned how to make the shapes of, the G and the C and the D, all that stuff. And from there, it was just I used it as a songwriting tool. And then whenever it came to like a lead solo time, I'd hand the guitar over and be like, all right, try this or write a solo or whatever. So, but it wasn't until I was in Coffin Cats, and at this point I'd been playing guitar for almost 20 years, and they hired me on, and we're touring and everything. But when we went to Europe, we were playing a festival in Belgium. I think it was. It doesn't matter what it was. Either way, we were playing a festival in Belgium, and we were playing with this band Peter Pan Speed Rock. Are you familiar with them?
No, great name though.
Yeah, right. They're a German band. Sometimes they come to the States. They played Smalls and Hamtramck before, but great band, tight. And the guitarist was just on stage, killing it. And I'm standing next to Vic Victor, out in the audience. And we're watching him. I'm like, man, this guy is just, he's nailing it. And he goes, that's the thing, John. The guitarist in a 3-piece band really carries the band. And I thought about it. I'm like, you're right. The guitar in a 3-piece band, it holds all of the harmonic content that supports the melody. It supports, the harmonies and everything. It's what everyone is singing along to and finding their pitch with. So talk about being out on that island, and especially as the front man for a band, having to sing and carry the band with your playing. Because you've won awards, locally especially. I'm not sure about abroad, and you can tell me if you have. But I know you've won awards locally for, best guitarist, or best instrumentalist, and it so happens that you play guitar, or outstanding, rock musician, whatever. Talk about the importance of that, because I don't think a lot of people realize how crucial it is for a guitarist in a 3-piece to be fucking on.
It is the scariest thing ever. It's interesting when I get on stage, I have to put on a different persona because I'm really nervous. Because I pace around before the show.
But okay, real quick, the whole thing with being really nervous, it's not just on stage. Because you came here and you're like, hey, did I park behind a car? Does that car need to move or anything? Hey, is it okay if I drink beer while I'm like, dude, relax, everything's cool. and I think part of this is, there's still a little bit of that shy, awkward kid in you, but don't ever lose that, because that's also what probably fuels some of your songwriting and everything. You know what I mean? It's just part of who we are. You know what I mean? Anyway, so go ahead.
It's so funny. I'm still the same neurotic, nerdy kid that I've ever been. Like in 5th grade, if someone's going to ask, what are you going to do with your life? I'm like, I'm probably going to be like a teacher or a scientist or a doctor or something like that. That's where my life was headed. Vegas odds would have been 7 million to 1 that I would be fronting a blues rock band and singing.
Yeah. Okay. So if your best friend when you were growing up, besides Tony, okay, I don't know if you're still in touch with.
I am.
Okay.
2 of them.
So, and are they still marveled at how different your life turned out from what you guys thought it was going to be when you were kids?
They're shocked, actually. My sister's also shocked. Like, I can't believe that's you up there.
So great.
My mom was shocked. It's weird to me to think about. Like, I'll be 44 in September.
Right on.
And it's so bizarre, the trajectory that my life has taken, which I never would have thought this would happen, to try and make a career out of music. I'm still a bartender at the Caju Cafe, because people always say, hey, you're the famous guy from the Mugs. I'm like, if I was famous, I wouldn't be bartending.
Right.
You got to hustle for $1, here and there. But the Caju's great because I'm able to go to Europe for like 6 weeks, come back and still have a job. Cause,
Righteous.
you don't really make much money. But, you know, as far as your first question goes, it really is scary being a singer / guitar player at the same time. But I like to look at some of my biggest influences: Rory Gallagher, Irish guitar god. He's amazing. Johnny Winter, Billy Gibbons.
Edgar's brother.
Yep.
Yeah. My dad broke Frankenstein. He was the first to play that record on air in the world.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
That was a DJ?
He was a DJ at Flint Rock. He was a DJ out in Omaha, and the day I was born, May 11th, 81, he got hired at W4 Country downtown, and he ended up being the creative director, and he worked there for 14 years before Clear Channel bought out Shamrock Broadcasting and got rid of anybody with a brain and an opinion. Okay, but back in the 70s there was a time from the 60s in the 60s and 70s where DJs were tastemakers, you know. And yeah, the record label would push their hits, but DJs would scrounge the record stores locally for records and look for new things, and they'd go home and listen to it on their systems and look for the deep cuts, you know, the stuff. And having a connection with your audience was so important. My dad had people, his audience would write letters into him and call, and he would always make his show fun. He grew up on Stan Freberg and stuff like that, you know, doing really good quality radio and making it interesting and fun for people to listen to. When he was doing radio, my dad, it was must listen for his audience, and he knew what would resonate with his audience. And so he told me the story about when he broke Frankenstein. He took that record to his boss and said, "I've heard this amazing song, you know, I'm going to play it, you know, tomorrow night." And he's like, "What? It's, you know, 10 minutes long, and it's
an instrumental."
It was originally titled Double Drum Solo. It wasn't titled Frankenstein because it has 2 drum solos in it, right?
Yeah.
The working title of the song was Double Drum Solo. So
I didn't know
he's
that.
like, man, it's an instrumental and it features 2 drum solos. No, people are gonna hate this. And now you hear it in car commercials, man,
all the time.
And every time I hear that song, I think my dad was the
He
guy with
broke
the
that
balls to play that on radio, and next thing you know, people are requesting it because the riff's undeniable, man.
It is.
When you hear something and that's what people are missing these days, I think, in the current culture with the pop music, is it's so homogenized and pasteurized that it lacks the depth and meaning. And there's some stuff out there that really resonates and pulls the heartstrings, but the DJs don't have power anymore. It's all done by playlists and by rote at this point. So anyway, I'm sorry. I just had to give that aside in there because you're mentioning Johnny Winter and Roy Gallagher and whatnot. Anyway,
yeah, that's awesome. Dad broke Frankenstein. That's great.
He was also the first guy to say IHOP instead of International House of Pancakes on the air.
Get out of here.
Because it was abbreviated so that it could keep the text shorter, but he just started saying IHOP. So now yeah. Yeah. My dad's got stories too.
Your dad's got fun facts.
Yeah, Rush stole his beer one time. He saw Steven Tyler
Russ Gibb?
No, Rush, the band.
Oh, Rush.
Yeah, they came in for an interview, and this was when he was. This is before his friend had sent him a 6-pack of Coors, and this was at a time when Coors was only available west of the Mississippi. Wow. So it was like a special treat for him. So he got the 6-pack, and this is winter, and he was interviewing Rush, and he put the 6-pack out on the windowsill to chill in the cold air. He did the interview with Rush, and when Rush left, his beer was gone. So he holds a grudge with Rush forever for that.
Stole my 6-pack.
Yeah, man. Anyway, so sorry, Johnny Winter. You were saying.
Oh yeah,
3-piece band, being the guitarist.
Yeah, it was a lot of responsibility, which I didn't think I could handle in the early days. But studying those guys, I realized. Well, the toughest thing is getting the cadence to try and sing while you're playing, because the reason I wanted to do the Mugs as a 4-piece with 2 guitar players is I could just stop playing and the other guitar player would keep the riff and I could sing over it. And since no one wanted to be in the band besides me, I had to learn how to write songs where it would be, I would do the riff and then just like a one big chord, sing over that. That's like the Mug secret recipe. Sing over the big chord. So, and I've learned over the years that there are certain riffs I can sing through and my fingers will work independently. But a lot of times it's really tough for your fingers to work independently of what you're singing. There's been some great melodies that have come through my head that I haven't been able to do because I can't play that and sing that at the same time, and that song's a goner, or else I'll just do it in the studio and never play it live.
Fair.
Yeah.
Do you ever let and pardon me if this is just my ignorance. Tony sang in the first band. Does Tony ever sing a tune while you just jam out? Do you guys ever go that route?
No, we don't actually. When we go to Europe, we actually practiced a couple songs, a couple of covers that Tony would sing. Just because we were doing like 2 hours shows a night, and
oh, wow.
and in a 5 weeks of 6 shows a week, I'm always worried that my voice is going to go, and we need in case of disaster with Danny's voice, break glass,
right?
And
on.
Tony, come in and sing.
And over there, there's a lot of smoking in
oh man,
everywhere,
tons of smoke.
Yeah,
sweaty, smoky, and I was just surprised. My voice actually has been holding up. I'm finally in my 40s learning how to sing. But Tony's got his own band called Dude, and he
it's called Dude.
Yeah. So I know it's great. He wrote all these songs before his stroke a long time ago, and I would play guitar on him, and he had a 4-track in his basement, and so now Dude actually he recorded the record, and he's doing all the singing for that. But as far as the Mugs go, me and Tony, I do all the singing, but Tony harmonizes with me, as best as him and I can harmonize. But he jumps in, but never does lead particularly. And not that I'm against it. I'd like to write a song for Tone, but he's already got the Dude thing going.
Sure.
With Todd, our drummer right now, actually plays in Dude with a couple other cats.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it's a great band. But yeah, it's just all me and Tony harmonizing. He's as big a Beatle fan as I am.
Right on.
So God, I wish I could write songs like the Beatles, but I try.
But they've been written already, man.
I know. I want to write great riffs with cool harmony melodies over it. I know that's the Mugs recipe.
But the thing I want to get to the Beatles too, because they really influenced your production for On With the Show, and you even said that you wanted to make a Revolver sounding record. And a lot of people may not realize that Revolver is what really changed the game for the Beatles. I don't know how into their history you are. I know you love their music, but
I'm a fanatic.
Okay, so Norman Smith, who was their engineer on everything pre-Revolver, discovered Pink Floyd and was going to produce them. And George Martin said, you can either produce Pink Floyd or record the Beatles, but you can't do both. And he said, well, I'm going to produce Pink Floyd. So Jeff Emmerich, who...
See, I read Jeff's book.
Here, There, and Everywhere?
Yeah, great book.
I teared up when it was over because I didn't want it to end.
Me too.
Oh, my God.
I didn't want to sidetrack
it, but just thinking about No, but this is the thing, is Jeff Emmerich broke the rules. They had guys following him around with lab coats back in the day, making sure the mics weren't this here and there. And just what he did with
Jeff Emmerich was punk rock with the recording. And those guys. I know, they had all those EMI guys, with their lab coats.
Yep. So when you talk about making a Revolver sounding record, I think he wants to break the mold. He wants to break the rules of what a blues rock band is supposed to sound like coming out of anywhere, but specifically coming out of Detroit. Because man, there's a lot of garage rock that's come out of Detroit in the last 40 years, and a lot of times, quite frankly, I feel like it can get played out. In the early aughts, the Hamtramck scene and everything, it seemed like everyone was trying to be, that. They were trying to kind of follow up what Jack White had,
the White Stripes,
the groundwork that they
led the way. And
and so do you... Part of making the Revolver sounding record is you said you guys, for that album, you had less time and money to make your second album than you did your first album, but you said that forced you into a position where you had to make decisions and you had to have it, everything ready to go. You even said, I wouldn't change a solo on that record. Do you feel as though digital technology has reduced the effort required to be a great band and really nail things down in the studio?
No, I don't think it's a good question, by the way.
Thanks. I thought of it myself.
Yeah, I don't think it's a detriment. There's a benefit to digital technology insofar as if you find the right engineer and the right studio, because it's not like it was in the 60s and 70s where, the 70s, Aerosmith would just go in, or the Stones, they would just go in and they had the studio for like 4 months booked.
Right.
Just pissing money away, and just, now that we're under the gun, like 2 weeks, and it's like $10,000 to make a record. As the cheapest you can make a record is like $10,000 right now, and we make the records as cheaply and quickly as we can, but with the best possible quality that we can too. But if it wasn't for digital technology, it really helps out insofar as, Aerosmith, a poor Aerosmith in the 70s couldn't afford, they didn't have their $100,000 budgets. That, if Aerosmith was given $10,000, they'd be doing, using digital technology, even though they'd probably still make a record and piss away $80,000. I can't believe bands piss away so much money. Like if I had $80,000, I would make 5 records with that.
Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, if you spend more than $10,000 on a record,
take $10,000, make a record, and then use the extra 70 and split it up among the members. Pay off your goddamn house.
Yeah,
like do something better with those resources.
Go tour with it or something like that.
Or the problem too though is if you're on a record label, whatever budget they give you, they want to exhaust that budget because they want to create an indentured servant out of you. And so it's if the record label says we're giving you $80,000 to make this record and it comes in at 10, they're just going to make you go recut it, and they're going to say no to this song, no to that song, and until that $80,000's gone, and then guess what? Now you got to pay it back. So
right, and I do enjoy the autonomy. In one way, I would love to have a record label to promote us. Because we're self-promoted, we do everything ourselves. I would love to have that type of thing. But it's also nice to be able to write your own stuff, no one over your shoulder. You make the record and you pay off the investors who helped you out, which is Scott the Gator Anderson, the Saint, who...
What? Really?
Yeah, Gator. He's our last... Let me see. Two or three
with Doug Karsh on 97.1? Right on, man.
Yeah.
I'm a sports talk radio fiend.
Same here.
Really?
Actually. And Gator...
Well, you played football, so are you still into sports then?
Love it.
Dude, that's great because, you know what, man? I find that... I know we keep going on tangents here,
I don't mind the tangents.
We're resonating with each other. I love sports. I love competition. I love the human endeavor and the sacrifice and the loyalty and the dedication that you have to have in order to achieve greatness on a professional level in sports. And yeah, they're overpaid, and yeah, it's overblown with advertising and corporate sponsorships and all this bullshit. But you can't deny the amount of hard work and hours and repetition and everything and just the physical strains you have to put on the human body in order to achieve that greatness. And I just have such an immense respect for that. But it seems like in the rock community, man, like, I remember going to Smalls and I'd be talking about sports with one person and someone's going, "Oh, you guys talking about sports ball?" Like you're indifferencing it because why? Because it's not cool. Like, don't you understand that it takes just as much, if not more, dedication and commitment and sacrifice to become a professional athlete as it does to become a professional musician? There's such a parallel path there between those two careers. And I think that if more people understood that and respected it, I've learned how to be a better musician and a better music businessman by watching sports. Tom Brady makes me want to get my ass up every day at the same time, eat well, work out, and attack my business and my life with intensity and intention. I feel inspired by that stuff. I think it's awesome. You're one of the few, especially with, dude, you play blues rock in Detroit and you love sports. We are diamonds in the rough in that respect.
We are diamonds in the rough. It's so funny. Do you know Steven Beggar from the Beggars?
I know one of the Beggars, and his name escapes me right now, man.
Yeah, right on. It's so funny. Yesterday, Steve called me up, and he's like, "All right, let's go throw the football." We always, that's one of our things to do. Is go throw the football, ride our bikes, and I play softball on the weekends. I so appreciate sports, but as far as musicians go, people who enjoy sports or can play are really in a minority. Like 90% of my friends have no athletic ability. My musical friends have no athletic ability whatsoever. Like, God, did you grow up playing football or baseball? Don't you appreciate the beauty of hockey's my favorite sport of all time. So which is a sport I've never played before. And my one regret in life is I never never learned how to skate.
Sure.
And I wish I could have.
Neither have I. I'll tell you what. You and I we'll go to a skating rink someday, and we'll look like idiots, but we'll know why, and we'll understand each other. Anyway, go ahead. Anyway,
but and it's so true. I'm like, God, I'll go to a bar and be with 20 musicians, and me and like one other person will be into the Tigers game. Like, oh, there we go. It's like, oh, you're watching this game, or like, can you put on the Red Wings game? I was like, oh, you're into hockey. Like, how can you not be? It's poetry.
Hockey town.
These guys are badass. Athletes.
And relative to the rest of the professional sports, they're the most grossly underpaid athletes.
They are
for what they go through and what they do.
Yeah, and that's Gator just became a buddy through all that scenario. It's funny. A funny Gator story is Scott Anderson.
Yeah,
is he would mention the Mugs a lot on 97.1 The Ticket.
Yeah,
and people was like, send me a text like, hey, Gator just mentioned you. This is before I met him.
Sure.
And one day he shows up to one of our shows, comes up to me, he's like, hey, how you doing? Danny from the Mugs, right? I'm like, yeah. What's your name? He's like, I'm Scott. Nice to meet you, Scott. What are you up to? And he's like, I come down to see you guys. Like, cool. I work here at the Cajun Cafe, and we're talking for a half hour, and then
this is before you know who he is.
Yep. And eventually, I'm like, what do you do for a living? He's like, I'm on 97.1 The Ticket. I'm like, oh, you're the Gator? I'm talking to him for a half hour. Had no idea it was the Gator.
Right on, man.
I was like, you didn't know that? I was like, I've never seen you before. I've only just listened to you. And I was like, your voice sounded familiar. I just didn't know what to think. And
right.
It
great,
turned out a great, friendship from here on in. We hang out all the time. In fact, our other friend Garrett has an inside track to DTE, front row tickets. So last year, me, Gator, and Garrett went and saw. We had front row to Aerosmith and front row to Van Halen.
Wow.
Front row. Eddie Van Halen in my face, and then Joe Perry in my face.
Wow,
I
man.
know. I couldn't believe it. Me and Gator just like, that's Joe Perry in our face right now.
Wow, man.
I know. We got so lucky with that.
That's fantastic.
And it's nice to, know people who know people, and I don't often get lucky like that. But as far as last year goes, Aerosmith and
that's pretty sweet.
Aerosmith
man.
and Van Halen.
That's pretty sweet, man. So you guys played the last show at a venue called the Gold Dollar, and for those people listening who aren't from the Detroit area, talk about the Gold Dollar's importance in Detroit music history and what it means or meant to you.
Well, the Gold Dollar was, that's the venue that basically took a chance on the garage rock bands. I mean, that broke the White Stripes for sure.
When they were was it Goober and the Peas or something like that?
Yeah, they were Goober and the Peas in the early days, and the upholsterers when Jack was an upholsterer.
And did you know Jack White?
I didn't. It's so fascinating how this, him and I were 1 degree removed. Well, so Tony and I were just starting the Mugs, and this is 1998 or 99. And we're like,
because you cut your demo in October 2000.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yep. And we were an East Side band, So this was all going on downtown with the Gold Dollar. And so on the East Side, me and Tony were the only...
What is that, a plane? Yeah, it's a plane flying by.
It
Anyway.
Nice. So Tony and I were like the redheaded stepchildren of the East Side because they were playing, 90s rock, just that type of 90s radio-ready rock. And we wanted to be Savoy Brown. And one day, Tony's like, there's a place called the Gold Dollar downtown. They're booking bands. Maybe we should book the Mugs in there. Let's go check it out. We'll go there tonight. So Tony and I went down there, not knowing, like, wow, this is a weird place. Cass Avenue looked, dirty, dingy. Walked in, and the Henchmen were playing.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Oh, my God, amazing. Garage rock band. The place was packed, sweaty, and coming from the East Side where everything sounds like Nickelback and Candlebox, we walk into this
Who
dirty,
are you hoping
sweaty...
for? Candlebox, right?
We hoping for Candlebox. Oh, yeah. We have a storied group of goofy not goofy. They're actually really nice guys. But it was a revelation. We saw the henchmen like, oh my God, what is this scene? Who are these people? What's going on? And Jack White was there. Wendy Case from the Paybacks. It was unbelievable. All the Wild Bunch, who turned out to be the Electric Six.
Okay.
You know, it was its own scene, and I had no idea. And this scene, nobody even had a clue that the scene would be anything. But I was just like, wow, this is dirty, dingy rock, like 60s stuff. Then, you know, found out about bands like The Go, and like, oh, Tone, we got to play here if we can. And we talked to Neil, the owner, Neil Yee. And he's like, oh, you got a little demo, a little 4-song demo. He listened to it. He's like, blues rock. Why not? And, you know, he put us in there. We got like 2 or 3 shows, and he ended up closing a year later. But so he had his last blowout show, and 2 days later, he's like, I got a shitload of this beer I got to get rid of. Will the Mugs play the last secret show at the Gold Dollar? You know, I'm not going to promote it. I'm just going to, ask a bunch of friends. This is before email and all that stuff. This is 1999 or 2000. But I'm like, yeah, sure. We'll play the show. We played to like 20 people. Wendy Case was in the audience. But we, as famous as that place is, I will put a feather in my cap that the Mugs are the last band to ever play the Gold Dollar.
Right.
And it's still just a building sitting there on Cass Avenue. And that place is so famous. Neil has so many recordings of like early White Stripes, the Wild Bunch, Paybacks. He's just kind of sitting on them. Not that he can do anything with them, but that's where that scene started, and unbelievable. And that changed Tony and I's life. We went from being, East Side guys to, playing on Harper and weird areas to people that, people in the know. I was like, wow, the Mugs, they're actually somebody or attempting something,
Sure.
blues rock. Because there was nobody doing blues rock type of stuff. And I've always been in the same room with Jack White, but I've never like formally met him until I joined the Paybacks and we opened for the White Stripes at the Masonic Temple.
Okay, right on.
That
Which
was
he
the
helped
first-
save, right? He paid the
He
back
did.
taxes. Yeah.
He paid their back taxes. Shit, what do you give him, like $5 million or $500,000?
It doesn't even matter. The
I
fact
know.
that he did it alone is pretty sweet.
It
and
is.
I read a USA Today article, and I think it was in like 07 that it was printed, or maybe 08, either way. And the headline was, got a goddamn moth in here. The headline was, Jack White leaves, quote, super-negative, unquote, Detroit. Jack White leaves super negative Detroit. And it's talking about how the narrative of it was he pieced out from Detroit and moved down to Nashville because he was tired of getting hated on by his musical peers in the community. And he's like, I'm paraphrasing here. He's like, I tried to make it not about me. I tried to build a musical community and bring people together. But when your hometown turns on you, you just have to leave. And it's and they likened it to a similar situation with the Strokes in New York. So when I heard that he paid the back taxes for the Masonic Temple and he's opening, Third Man Records in here and everything, he's investing back in Detroit, when the city essentially kind of gave him the finger for leaving, he's now taking his fame and fortune and reinvesting in his hometown. And I find that fascinating because, I've said it before, but a lot of people lead with their victim story these days. And it's I've been hurt, I've done this, here's all my troubles and my strife and my trials and tribulations and everything, and fuck those people, this is a new life, da 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 da. But he went, you know what? Okay, I got to leave so that I can be authentic and become who I'm going to be and find the success. And now that he has that success, he's bringing that money back home. I mean, the guy's got a room at Blackbird Studio down in Nashville of his own, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
He could have just stayed in Nashville and just said, screw Detroit, but he didn't. He came back. I want to ask you, when you made your second album, On With The Show, one of your favorite local guitarists gave you a huge compliment saying, man, you guys just raised the bar for songwriting and album making around Detroit. I want to ask you 2 questions. First of all, which guitarist, okay? And to piggyback off what the Jack White conflict with other musicians in the community, is it important to you, Danny Methric, to impress the musicians in the Detroit music community? First of all, who's the guitarist?
I don't know. I'm curious who said that.
I found this from an interview you did back in 2009. So it's 7 years removed now that you said this. But yeah.
Who was it?
I don't know. You didn't mention the name. I wanted to find out which guitarist you respect
Oh,
in
it's
the
not even...
local music community or whatever. I don't know if it would be like Chuck Burns, who used to drum for
God,
Seduce, or I don't know.
I'm curious who it was.
Right on. Well,
Ooh,
forget that
interesting.
then. Yeah, forget that
right
then.
on. Oh,
but is it important for you that other musicians in the community respect what you do, or are you more of a thing like, you know what, if the people here don't care, I don't care, because guess what? I go over to Europe for 5 weeks and they all care and they love what I do, you know?
You know, at the end of the day, you know, especially being a competitive sports guy, I consider myself competitive, you know, and I do want to write to, you know, I'd like to leave a legacy of, you know, I mean, personally, I'd like to be the greatest or one of the greatest riff writers who ever lived. You know, it's bizarre, it's lofty, and I'll never get there. But, you know, I don't just write just like, I'm just going to please myself. I want to write to be remembered. As, you know, I would love to be remembered as a kid from Detroit who just wrote great guitar riffs, decent lyrics, and an all right melody. You know,
you're selling yourself so short. But the thing is ambition. The word ambition seems to be a dirty word sometimes, and a lot of people don't like it, especially in a rock community. And you know, I came up in the punk rock scene for a good, it's been like 20 years going on now, where, you know, it's don't be a sellout, you know, and don't try hard, you know, nobody likes to try hard. And it's like, wait a minute, we're only here for one lifetime, you know, and the impact we make on the world is what we're going to be remembered by. And use the word legacy. That is so awesome. Legacy is huge for me. I think about, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to have kids. Right now we don't want kids. First of all, we're not financially free and trying to bring a kid up in this world unless you've got money.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm in the same boat.
Screw your dreams and everything. But for you to say that you want to be remembered and you write your music and compose toward achieving that goal of being remembered and leaving a legacy, not many people that I know in this music community in Detroit would admit to that. But I think a lot of them feel the way we do. They're just afraid to say it. They're afraid to speak on their ambition, and they're afraid of the reproach and reprobation that they'll get from their colleagues and their friends and their family for wanting to shoot for the moon and land in the stars.
You're exactly right.
Why is that? Why is it so toxic to say that you want to be great?
Yeah, it's some people just, you know, take the cool factor too far. Like, you know, I'm so punk rock, I'm so cool that I don't care what anyone thinks of my stuff, you know, I'm just gonna, and, you know, there is that aesthetic, and, you know, some people have gotten away with that, you know, like, but, you know, Iggy Pop, he wanted to be one of the greatest frontmen who ever lived. You know, he'll probably never say it, but, you know, it's weird that these, you know, kids have a problem with admitting you're ambitious.
It's not just kids, though, man. There's people my age. There's people your age.
That's true.
That are still, and look, you've got your roots and whatnot with blues and classic rock and all that stuff, and you wear your influences on your sleeve, and you're unabashed in your feelings about them. I don't, but this adherence and this loyalty to tradition and the way things are, quote unquote, supposed to be done in making rock and roll or making music, whether it's the way that you record it or the type of song you write or the arrangements, it seems as though there's this clinging on to these old dead legends and these past ways of doing things where the world is changing, you know, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, on and on. Things are happening so quickly that it's so hard to keep up, and it's almost like if you're not ahead of the curve, you're already behind. So why is it that so many people insist on beating these dead horses and adhering to guidelines and techniques that were crafted decades ago? Why don't people feel free or feel as though they don't even have the permission to explore their muse and push boundaries and explore different avenues of thinking as how do they approach their creative work. Because I've felt stifled by it. You know, we were talking before we started recording, but I've been doing rock and roll, or did rock and roll, for 20 years with my peers and whatnot. And guess what? I hardly talk to any of them anymore because they are so ingrained in their way or the way that they think things should be done, where I'm trying to explore the new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why is it? You know, and I said this the first podcast I recorded with Emily Schaller, who is the CEO of the nonprofit Rock.
I love Emily.
You know Emily. Okay, so
CF
perfect.
Emily.
Yes, exactly. Rock CF. She was quoted, her band Helen, okay, she did an interview, I think, with Metro Times back in the day, and in that interview, she said, Detroit is a city that practically dares you to be in a band, okay, right?
That's well put.
Right? So why is it that people are so reticent to adapt and change? Why adhere to all these strict rock and roll rules?
You know, amazingly, there's a lot of people who are adhering to the rules, and I think there's a lot who aren't, though, because there's so many genres out there in Detroit. That's amazing for a goofy city this far north. It's amazing that, you know, we still, you know, country, jazz, you know, folk.
Mm-hmm.
There's
W4 Country was the premier country radio station in the country in the late 80s, man.
And, you know, for the home of Motown, it's amazing how big of a country contingent that we have here. You know, and I think it just depends on, you know, some bands, they like to put on airs and you know, act, you know, they can't write a good song, so they have to act cool and pretend their bad songs are cool just because of their attitude. And then there's other, you know, unpretentious bands who just write great songs. And it's like, oh, you know, I'm just doing the best I can. I'm going to put these out. Like great songwriters, there's a ton of them out there. They just don't get the press that the...
Give me for instance. Give me a couple examples of people that you think deserve more accolades and more attention paid to them.
Oh, Outrageous Cherry, for sure. Matt Smith and Outrageous Cherry. Anything Eddie Baranek is in. He was in the Sights, and now he's in the Scrappers. The kid writes amazing songs. The Hard Lessons. I always love the Hard Lessons. Wendy Case from the Paybacks. Unbelievable songwriter. Mike Elgert and Brad Genza, two amazing songwriters. They're also in a Cheap Trick tribute band, but when they write songs, it's absolutely amazing. Oh man, there's a bunch now that I think about them, but definitely Matt Smith and Outrageous Cherry is probably the most underrated songwriter in Detroit. He just writes great melodies, great songs. It's all psychedelic, and you know he writes for himself. You know, the poor guy, he's a little bit older than me. We actually look alike. A lot of people confuse us, but he just, you know, puts out record after record of great songs. He's like, you know, I just do it just to do it. He's kind of my inspiration as far as, you know, I'm subscribed to the fact that the Mugs will never be big. You know, we're not going to get signed. We're not going to never hit the radio or anything like that.
Not with that attitude.
Not with that attitude, sir. I know. You know, they'll just look right over us. I mean, we got lucky. You know, as far as, you know, you just keep writing songs and maybe something nice will happen. Like we just got a song in the new movie, The Purge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, The Purge, election year.
Sure.
And it's a little 5-second snippet of a song from On With the Show called Never Know Why. And it's funny, you know, the longer you stick around, you keep putting out a quality product. That's Tony and I's mantra. Stick around, put out a quality product, you know, and I hate to call it a product.
No, but it is. At the end of the day, you know, you're creating something, and if people don't pay money for it, that means it either isn't good or you haven't invested in it enough. I feel you, man. I feel you.
And, you know, and hopefully leave a good legacy.
Right.
Like, you know, Vincent Van Gogh. I'm a big reader and a big fan of, like, art. And I look toward Vincent Van Gogh and I always think about, you know, where the Mugs are at. Insofar as this poor guy, he sold one painting in his lifetime, tortured artist his whole life, you know, and I'm not a tortured artist. I'm pretty fortunate, actually. But, you know, there's not one person in the world who doesn't know who Vincent Van Gogh is. He created his legacy, you know, because he had to paint. nobody was buying it, but it was just compulsive. He had to do it. And he created these masterpieces that, you wish he could see what his influence is on the world.
It almost makes you wish, and hope for an afterlife, because that way he can actually enjoy it.
I know.
Yeah.
Just like, do you know how famous you are? Your stuff's being sold for like $8 million a painting.
Like Mozart.
I was just going to say Mozart, buried in a pauper's grave at 35 years old.
Mozart. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a Mozart fanatic. That's awesome.
Amadeus is my Desert Island movie.
Nice work. Me too. Oh, my God.
We're kindred, brother.
He's, people ask me, like, who's your favorite musician of all time? Like, well, Stevie Wonder's my favorite songwriter of all time, but Mozart is the greatest musician who ever walked this planet. 300 years later, there's nobody better. And
Seriously.
and honestly, there's never going to be another Mozart. In 1,000 years, Mozart's still going to be the greatest who ever lived. And how badass is that?
That's right. And that's what you talk about. But that's what we talk about. Legacy, man.
Yep.
Legacy. The name of this podcast is Get After It, and really what it's about is finding your passion and attacking it with intensity. But the ultimate goal of it is to leave a lasting impact on the world that survives longer than you.
Yeah.
That old chestnut of plant seeds for trees whose shade you'll never sit in, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's well put.
So I got it from a Bernie Sanders meme the other day I saw.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's that's awesome that you appreciate all of that, and that leaving a legacy is what drives you to create and put yourself out there like that. I want to move on. I want to talk to you about the Next Great American Band. This is the Fox TV show that, if anyone remembers, I think it only lasted one season.
One season.
Okay, it was. Hey, American Idol's popping. We want to piggyback off American Idol and create another show that can make us money, essentially. So they try to find the next great American band. And you guys, the Mugs, made it to the top 12 out of over 10,000 applicants or contestants, if you will. Talk about your experience being on a national television show, and what were the elements which took you by surprise? Also, were your expectations met, exceeded, or not lived up to? And while you start, you know what? While you start talking, I'm gonna pour myself another beverage.
Oh yeah, go for it. I'm gonna go at this question though,
because I can hear you in the other room.
Yeah, right on. Well, it was a fantastic, weird experience insofar as Tony and I got the call from somebody in California. I was like, hey, there's this new show coming out called Next Great American Band. Would the Mugs like to be a part of it? Come out and audition. It was like 7,000 bands. It was like an American Idol type of thing. I'm like, sure, that sounds like a blast. They're like, we'll pay for you to come out to Burbank. Like, wow, free trip to Burbank, California. We'll take that. And, not expecting anything to come of it. And so we flew out to Burbank, blues rock band. With, everyone's like kind of, all the other bands, there's country, pop bands, all these things. Like, wow, this is really neat. We're all in the same room together. We go into the room and play for the judges.
Did you have to play like their house instruments or whatever the hell or something like that?
Yeah, I brought my guitar, but that was it.
Good. I can't imagine a bunch of bands sitting in a room with all their equipment set up, tear down, set up, tear down, set up.
Thankfully. And, we played White Boy Blues and a little bit of Gonna Need My Help, which is an old Muddy Waters song. And, we rocked out, like, all right, 5 minutes, after 5 minutes, like, thanks for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. Well, you can fly us back to Detroit now. And then, so the guy comes out, is like, all right, there's 10 bands in here that are going to go to the next round in Las Vegas. And like, all right, cool. It was like, and the Mugs were one of them. Like, no way. So we're not going home. We're going to Vegas. And that was the next audition. That was in front of Sheila E., Johnny Resnick, and Dicko from Australia.
What the hell is Dicko? I don't even know what that is.
Dicko was the Simon Cowell of
the.
I know it was a.
It's a carbon copy.
Sheila E. was Paula Abdul,
right?
And Johnny Resnick was whoever else was on.
Sheila E.'s got more talent than Paula Abdul. Sorry, Paula.
Oh
Abdul.
yeah, she totally does.
Maybe she can't dance like you, Paula, but she can play anyway.
Yeah, but sure as shit. We played in the Arizona desert or Vegas, the Nevada desert. It was 110 degrees. It was
Yeah, it was that outdoor thing.
the outdoor thing. It was 110 degrees. It was a disaster. I'm like, well, tell them this is it. We're screwed. We played, and they did. The cool thing was, I sang like shit. My voice was so dry. We couldn't drink. It was 10 in the morning. I was so nervous. 20 cameras in front of the judges, and I just like.
And you only perform for the judges.
Yes.
This is outdoor. Okay.
And all the other bands were off to the side, and I knew it was over, but we did okay, and thankfully they cleverly edited it, and that was one of the surprises. Come to your what was surprising about it is they made us look way better than we actually played that thing.
Right on.
Because when it was over, I'm like, oh, that was terrible. And then they said, you guys are going to the show. I'm like, get out of here. No way. And in one aspect, Tony's, who recently was recovering from his stroke, that did have, that did help us out in the
a narrative.
In the narrative category.
Yeah.
And also
it gave you a story.
Yeah. And also, not to, you can't take anything away from, we rock. Out of all the bands that were there, like 3 of the bands were country bands. We were one of the few bands that actually rocked. I saw like 40 bands. Like, oh, this is gonna be a pretty boring show because I just assumed we were going home.
Right.
I'm like, all right, cool. They're gonna put us on the show and we're gonna rock. And so we ended up making it, and that was fascinating. The cool things were just seeing the inner workings of a TV show, of all the cameras. You got to get up at 6:30 in the morning. I'd get up, I'd take a shower, and then go to makeup.
Yeah.
And and then you put a bunch of makeup on your face, and then start teasing my hair. I'm like, oh man, I just spent all morning getting my hair the way it's supposed to be. And they would tease it and do weird things to it. I'm like, oh man,
That's funny.
Got to go on. I know, and then go on stage. And the tough thing was going on stage with a Fender Twin.
Ouch.
I know, and I it was so great, and so I turn it on to 1.5, and like and the sound guy's like, can you turn that down a little? Turn it down to 1. I can barely hear it, like standing next to it. He's like, can you turn it down a little more?
Wow.
I'm like, come on, man, this is
You're talking about rock and roll here, brother.
Yeah, exactly. So that sucked. But other than that, I would do it again in a second. They treated us really well. We made it through the first 3 weeks. We got voted out on. Originally the show was supposed to be an original show. Like the bands come in and do originals, one original and one cover, and it was basically an hour or a minute and 30 seconds of each one. And it was so funny. The rehearsals, we had a dude come in who, we had a specific rehearsal time. They would drive us out to Burbank, California, and mugs were between 4 and 6. You're going to do your Bob Dylan song, and then you're going to do your mug song. So a guy would come in with a stopwatch, and so it's like, all right, start your song. It's like, click. It's like, all right, so we have to cut this verse down. We have to cut that down. This has to be 1:30. Then we got it down to like 1:32. He's like, oh, we got to shave 2 seconds. Like, oh.
Play it a little fast.
Yeah, right. Shave 2 seconds. It was that was the surprising part, was it was down to the digits.
Wow.
Of, 1:30. But then after 2 weeks, they said that no one can do originals anymore because they were looking at the ratings weren't where they wanted them to be, because apparently people just like American Idols. They liked one person to latch onto. They weren't into the band scenario. So
people don't identify with groups. They join groups that are led by an individual. They identify with individuals. Yeah.
So then we were just kind of screwed. We had to do Billy Joel week Elton John week, and there were 2 rock songs. They give you a little list, and of all the Elton John songs, there were 2 rockers: "Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting" and "Bitch Is Back."
Sure.
And the 2 rock bands, the Little Kids. Light of Doom, they got Bitches. No, they did get Bitches Back, I think. And then someone else got Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. I'm like, well, shit, we were screwed. We had nothing else to go with. So we went with I guess that's why they call it the blues. Tried to rock it up with
Sure.
a slide, and just tried to make a rock thing out of it. And at the end of our performance, in a minute and a half, we had to figure that out. And then it's like, Danny, it was okay, but I think the band needs a new singer. So
Oh shit!
it was all right. I took it, but I gave a thumbs down on TV. I didn't realize that because you can't really retort to the judges,
Right.
And I was like, I was just pissed that we had to do the song that we didn't want to do. I wish we could have done an original or something like that. So I did give them a thumbs down, and we were off the show the next week.
Lickety split.
Yeah, we were. I don't think they liked our attitude.
They want you to play ball, and that
They do.
That brings me to my next point: is you were worried that if you did well on the TV show, that you'd get signed. That if you got signed, a label would cut your songs, wanting hits, bringing in their own songwriters and whatnot. How important is it to you to stick to your guns and be authentic rather than catering to the masses? And also, do you feel it's important to have hit songs in your repertoire as a musician?
It is important to have hit songs. I mean, I know. This late in the game, I know I'm never going to have like an actual quote unquote hit record. Something that's played on the radio.
Why not?
Radio's dead.
Radio is
unfortunately.
dead, but songs last forever.
That is
Songs
true.
live. Okay, and I want you to finish, but to that point, I just recently got on Spotify. I resisted it. I resisted the streaming. I love vinyl. I love, actually holding the artwork in my hand, all that shit. With streaming, it's here and then it's gone. But I'm looking at, everyone's saying, oh, you can't make money music and radio's dead and all this stuff. Yeah, but streaming and Spotify is killing it. You see a guy like Drake, it gets what is it, like 2 million daily plays on one
That's
song.
true.
You know what I mean? So I feel like radio's dying because it's not delivering what people want, and that's that authenticity. It's that realness. What radio is doing is just putting out what the record labels sell them, and that's because, not trying to get all meta here, but that's because Clear Channel came in and basically used the loophole of the new FCC laws and all that stuff that were created in the late 90s, early aughts, and bought up as many radio stations in the country as they possibly could, and now it's, hey, we own music in the United States. So anyway, you're saying it's important to have hits. Why don't? And it doesn't even have to necessarily be with the Mugs, but if you could write a hit song tomorrow and release it and allow that to catapult you to not even necessarily fame, but just to a place where that song or those couple of hit songs you wrote are creating a certain amount of financial freedom for you to explore further with the Mugs. Is that not an option for you, or are you so locked into the Mugs, and the Mugs is so, your identity is wrapped up so much in the Mugs? I mean, when I call you and try to leave a voicemail, it's you've reached Danny Muggs. Yes, the Danny Muggs. And I know you're joking, and I know you're being facetious with it because you are a humble cat. You are modest. You are still that nerdy, shy, awkward kid. But at the same time, you understand the identity that people have come to know you as. All right. Is it a thing of you're so wrapped up in that you think the Mugs are your only musical outlet that can help you achieve any? I'm going to say fame, but I don't mean it in the way that most people mean it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why don't you think you can have a hit either with the Mugs or without? Or is that something? Again, is that something you'd want to do?
Well, I guess I'm a pessimist
Okay.
insofar as what can happen to a 43-year-old kid, blues rock kid.
Sure.
But amazingly, in the past 10 years, especially being under the tutelage of Wendy Case and the Paybacks, I've finally learned how to write a song, like the songs that I want to hear, pop songs, ultimately. And I've sprinkled the Mugs records. There's always like one or two pop songs on each record that I'm always afraid of because everyone loves the blues rock ones. But, the pop ones, like Somewhere Down the Line is a straight up pop song. Fat City on Straight Up Boogaloo is a straight up
Your
pop
newest
song.
record.
Yeah. And the new record, that there's a couple of pop songs I write. I'm always embarrassed for the pop songs, but I feel strongly about them, like if anyone wanted to cover a Mug song, it would be, the pop ones.
The hit.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to write hits, I write to write hits. Even like even obscure songs like 6 to Midnight, I think about like if like 6 to Midnight came out in 1971, it would be like a Jethro Tull song, like
Sitting on a park bench.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man.
And that song is not a hit per se.
Is that how thick as a brick?
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Aqualung.
Aqualung. Yeah, right.
And that song's not, you don't write that song and think like this is a hit. It's just a great song that,
Sure.
in the dawn of FM radio, we're kind of a band out of time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We're writing songs for 1971 and, and there's a couple of bands that have gotten through like, Wolf Mother, they have a very,
What's
Black
his name?
Sabbath
Andrew.
song.
What's his name? Andrew something.
Yeah, it
Andrew
is
Stockton or something.
Andrew Scott?
Stockdale.
Oh, yeah, Andrew Stockdale.
Stockdale. Yeah.
Great band, those
I
kids.
listened to Jay Moore's, the comedian.
Yeah.
I listened to Jay Moore's podcast, and he interviewed Andrew Stockdale.
Oh, really?
And he in Wolf Mother, he's the guy. He is the songwriter. He's a multi-instrumentalist as well,
Yeah.
to where he performs everything and demos it for the band. Then they learn it and then they cut it. And yeah, he's written some hits, but it's tough nowadays for a band like. I think the reason that you're saying we're never going to break through, we're never going to have a hit, is it's tough for bands like yours to break through because you are hearkening back to the olden days where everyone is, constantly going the new. You look at festivals like Bonnaroo and Coachella, you'll have the old dead legends coming and play, and you have old Cella that just is happening or whatever.
Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney.
Yeah, and it's essentially see them before they die.
I know.
That's what it is
Brian
right now
Wilson,
because
yeah.
all the greats are dying. But if there's got to be a way to wrap the Mugs around a song that resonates today with more than just people who like the old stuff. And if not, there's got to be an outlet for you. Do you play in any other band? This is my ignorance again. But do you play in any other bands besides the Mugs now?
Yeah. Well, there's a band called the Rump Shakers, but that's old school blues,
Nice.
and we haven't played in about a year, but that always pops up. And I'm in a Peter Green Fleetwood Mac tribute band,
Right on.
and a band called Awesomer. But those are all cover bands. Mugs is the only original band that I'm technically in right now.
Are you interested in being in a band that's exploring more material that resonates with a newer audience?
Oh,
not in a sellout way, just in I want to explore other avenues of guitar playing and singing and harmonizing way.
I do. Well, it's interesting. I've already precursor to Todd and Tony that this new Mugs record is not going to sound like old Mugs records. I want to write the next Mugs record. It's going to be called Slave to Sound. I always name it before I write it.
No, that's good because you have a vision. You're creating that vision of what you want, and then your decision making throughout the writing process, the recording process, the production progress is to fulfill that original vision. No, I think that's smart. I know people who, myself even, I think of the album art and stuff like that before I'm even writing songs. Like what?
I've already done that too.
That's great. Hilarious. No, that's great. It's begin with the end in mind. That's actually a habit. You read Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm-hmm. It's one of his habits. Begin with the end in mind.
Wow.
That way you fulfill the vision. You have a goal.
That's how straight up Boogaloo went. Because that started out as an album title. Because there was something Todd said in the back seat while we were driving in Spain. We were listening to some some Spanish jam while we were in Spain. Todd's like, that's a straight up Boogaloo, and a Boogaloo is an actual real time signature style. I didn't realize that, but me and Todd were partying our asses off on the way to this gig. We played the worst gig of our lives because we were drinking. We had a bottle of Four Roses in the van.
Small batch. Stuff.
It was unfortunately it was the worst show we've ever played. We got drunk on the way there. Well, we never did it again.
Hey,
but
how do you know enough's enough?
But straight up Boogaloo, I wrote it down like that's a great title.
That's great.
I'm gonna make a record straight up. But getting back to the new Mugs record, I am completely on your wavelength insofar as gonna do stuff on this Muggs record that I've never done before.
Awesome.
Guests, playing harmonica. There's a song I wrote which I can't sing. It's kind of like a country song, and I have a girl in mind to sing this thing, and I'm like, it's going to be a Muggs record. Just I can't call it anything else. I don't know what to, it's just going to be a Muggs record. Sure. But there's going to be a song with a girl singing on it.
Right on,
and
man.
it's a beautiful song. I love it. I'm just really branching out, but it's I guess Tony has Dude. It's his solo project, but ultimately, I guess. If I moved on, it's just the Muggs, I guess, would be my solo project anyway, I suppose. I write, but we all get fair writing credits. Me, Tony, and Todd, we split everything 3 ways because I'm nowhere without Tony, and I'm nowhere without Todd, with his, he brings awesome drumming ideas, and I throw ideas,
very
songwriting
benevolent
ideas
of
at
you.
Tone. It's the right thing to do,
Have you ever been burned by band members, though? Have you ever felt betrayed or cheated on? Not cheated on, like sleeping together, but you know what I mean. Have you ever felt betrayed by a band member?
No,
Lucky you.
I know, I am lucky. I did get fired from the Rump Shakers and rehired, but I got fired because I had to miss a couple of gigs because of work. Chef Chris, who I love, has the best barbecue ever in Manchester, Michigan.
Right on.
Chef Chris Boogie Woogie Barbecue. Love you, Chef.
There you go. A little shout out there.
Yeah, and I deserve to get fired. It's like, hey, Danny, can you do this gig? Like, nope, I can't take the night off of work. It's a Friday. Danny, can you do this gig? I'm sorry, guys. I'm like, Chef's like, you're fired. I get somebody else. And then 6 months later, it's like, hey, Danny, can you do this show? Yeah, I'm off. All right, you're back in.
Nice.
So no, I've never had any
band drama.
I've been lucky.
Well, the most dramatic thing that you've had to deal with, and this is, again, like I said, it's an unavoidable topic when someone new is interviewing you about the Muggs, but Tony having a stroke, okay, and it was literally like a couple of days after your first gig as a band. Be honest, be forthcoming, and say this without fear. What was the first thing that popped in your head when you heard the news that Tony had a debilitating stroke?
As far as the doctor's prognosis, he said he might not live through the week.
Okay, that's what the doctor said. But what was the first thought that popped into your head?
Freaked out, completely freaked out. The first thing. Now this was the days of landline tones. Now, and coincidentally, this was a week after the last Gold Dollar show.
Yeah,
and the next day after the Keju Cafe had a thing called the Muscle Beach Party, MUSSEL, and it was outside. And the Muggs were just starting to, like, shit was really happening for us. We did, the Gold Dollar, Muscle Beach was packed. Tony was fresh, divorced, or he just was separated from his wife at the time. Like, the world was going to be our oyster. And it was the Tuesday, September 4th, 7 days before September 11th happened. I get the call from Tone's mom. It's like, Tony had a stroke, and we're not sure what's going to happen. So it was the days of landline. I freaked out. I had no idea what was going on. All I could think of was like, oh my God, he's only 20. He was 28 years old. I'm like, Tone's gonna die, or he's never gonna walk again. He's never gonna talk. Ran down to the hospital, and he's laying there, eyes wide open. He knows exactly what's going on with him, but he can't talk. And I go into the room, and we had a big gig that Saturday, the following Saturday at Dally in the Alley. And so he's like looking at me and blinking like he wants to say something, but he can't. And so I start asking him questions. Tone, do you need something? And he's just blinking. I'm like, and for some reason, it just popped into my head. Tone, I got to cancel this Saturday. And he does this. Like, he was pissed. Like,
right.
It finally hit him that you're not going to be out of here by this Saturday, after the doctor gave us the prognosis. But all he wanted to ask me was, don't cancel the gigs, or can I make the gig Saturday?
Wow.
I know it was unbelievable to me, and then he was just kind of despondent after that, and I just walked out and I cried my face off.
Yeah, it's your best friend, man.
No shit. I couldn't believe it, and you know, he had setback after setback. You know, the doctor's prognosis was scary.
Right.
He'll never, you know, there's a good possibility he'll never walk again, and there's a great possibility he'll never talk again. And so we just go in there and visit and, you know, talk to him, and things could not have been worse. He was going through his separation divorce, so his wife wanted to be in there, you know, just like, you know, it was just fresh from that perspective, like, you know, them breaking up. So, but the family didn't want to see her. You know,
Right.
all his families are, oh my God, the kid was just tied to the whipping post. And I'm freaked out. And, you know, so, you know, day after day goes by, you know, Tone's, you know, basically in a state where all he can do is listen and look at you. You know, he can only just move his eyes. And then 7 days later, September 11th happens.
Jesus.
It's like, yeah. So while we're in the hospital, you know, that whole thing goes down. Like, well, this is the worst possible thing that could
End of the world for your
world.
reality. Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh my God. It's just it was it. It was. I was like, all right. It's, you know, the world's ended. Tone's dying. I could not have been more despondent. My mom died 6 months prior.
Jesus.
At 47. Oh, it was the toughest year. 2001 was terrible, completely terrible. But man, Tone somehow, some way, he just willed himself back. You know, started to make words, and he was just, you know, rehabbing himself. You know, doing the best he could. Totally defied doctors' expectations. They didn't expect anything. They didn't expect him to last through the month. And I just can't believe his dogged dedication to getting better. There is one funny story, though. I got to laugh at this because Tony's so stubborn. And this is like 3 months into his, you know, after his stroke. And he, you know, he can't move his arm. His whole left side is paralyzed, still is. But he can walk, though. He can lift his arm up a little bit. But 3 months into it, he wanted to go to the bathroom, and he's like, I can do it. I can make it to the bathroom. So he rolls out of his hospital bed thinking he can make it, just lands on the floor and just like can't go any further. So he just has to start screaming, help.
Oh, Jesus.
Get me up.
Jesus.
And so we all went there the next day like, Tone, what the hell were you thinking? I was like, I thought I could make it. I'm like, you stubborn bastard.
Good
you know,
on him,
yeah.
though.
You know, he could, you know, his speech was still, you know, slurred, but it's so amazing.
And now he sings harmonies with you. Fast forward 15 years later.
Unbelievable.
And for those listening who don't understand or know, this is like a defining moment in your career, and you even in the Muggs' career, and you even said, you know, that it sucks that it had to happen, but quite frankly, it helped create a narrative that helped, you know, keep your television appearance going at the time and everything. So, you know, and I don't know Tony, and I just don't know Tony, but I know that the human endeavor, the will to go on, the will to make the best and the most of your situation has got to be deeply ingrained in him. And a life-changing situation like that has probably given him so many positive things and a much more positive outlook on life than he may have had prior. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's
sobering.
Not only you know, Tony's recovery, because a little side fun fact is our last show right before Tony's stroke was at the Caju Cafe Muscle Beach Festival.
Yeah, you were telling me. Yeah.
And 2 years to the day, 2 years later after Tony's rehab, and he went to California and did oxygen therapy and things like that. They didn't help him the way they would have liked to have. But his rehab and his dogged dedication to getting himself better got him back on his feet. And when he was in California, we actually came up with the idea. Matt Smith from Outrageous Cherry is one of the guys, and Johnny Hench, to the idea that he can play the Fender Rhodes instead of, like, you know, because he used to play bass like John Paul Jones, you know, like a straight up bass. But, like, you know, Tony, you can play bass like Ray Manzarek from The Doors. You know, you learn all the bass lines one-handed. And, you know, when we had that conversation, he's like, all right. And it's funny, I'm looking at your keyboard right here. And it was basically something like that, but it was a little Casio keyboard. And I swear, that night, Tony's like, all right, I'm going to learn all the Mug songs on this little Casio. It was like a piece of shit Casio keyboard. And he learned all the bass lines. I was like, well, I got it. You know, I'm coming back to Detroit. And, you know, want to start practicing. So I talked to Matt, our drummer. You know, we haven't played in 2 years. And I'm like, this is going to be the greatest idea. Well, actually, a friend of ours said, and she was right. It's like, this is going to be the greatest idea, or it's going to be so sad. We were dealing with that. Like, this could be, like, really pathetic, you know, like getting Tone up there. I didn't know. I was so nervous. Like, can we do this? Because there was no Mugs without Tony. There was, you know, a lot of people told me after Tony had his strokes, like, you know, replace Tony, you know, see how his recovery goes. And I'm like, I can't do it. You know, him and I are brothers in music.
You're brothers in life.
Yeah, exactly. We're brothers in life.
You're not related by blood, but you're related by sweat, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, throwing the football to each other and coming up together, him, you know, being the fighter in school like you're talking about.
Yeah,
you know,
he protected me like several times.
This is, and that's...
saved me from an ass kicking.
Yeah, that's a bond. And people don't get... Everyone gets wrapped up in the band and making it and all that bullshit, man. But when you have a bond with someone, it's stronger than just you're the bass player. The only person that I really talk to and hang out with I've been in several bands over the last 20-some years, and the only person I still talk with and hang out with is my best friend, Ricky. He was in my band Bad on Fire for barely 7 months, but he attacked it with intensity, and he attacked it 100%, and he's the only person who ever quit a band that I've formed or been in that said, John, I'm quitting because I met this girl she's now my female best friend, Samantha. They're married, have a daughter. She's not my niece by blood, but she's my niece by life, right?
Right on.
He was the guy I was texting back and forth with. We're going to hang out tonight after I wrap up with you. But he left the band 3 weeks before the biggest show of our tenure when we sold out the Crowfoot Ballroom in Pontiac.
Nice.
And, yeah, I know, hey, humble brag, right? Anyway, but he quit 3 weeks before the show, totally left us hanging. But I respected him for it because he said, John, I'm quitting. I'm not going to be able to do the show, and I can't be in the band because I've fallen in love with Sam, and I'm going to get my union floor laying job back, and I need to get my life together. And I know that to do all these things, I'm not going to be able to give this band 100%. So in order to not hold you back from your dreams, I'm respectfully exiting. He's the only one that never left in a huff and a puff or blamed somebody else or something else for leaving. He said, I'm doing this for you, right? And he's the only one I still hang out with and talk to on the regular. And that type of bond I have with Ricky is the same bond that you have with Tony, and you're still fortunate to play in a band with him. So for people to say, oh, replace him, do this, you need to move on, there are so many fucking people. And who are giving you, there's so many, I'm going to get this. There are so many fucking people in this community who want to tell you how to do it that aren't fucking doing it. They're not doing anything except telling other people how it should be done or how they are gonna do it, but they don't do it. All right? Are the people who are telling you and giving you advice about replacing your best friend and your brother in life, are they still doing it, or do they even play music anymore?
No, they're
exactly.
They're not even doing it anymore.
Exactly.
Actually, now that I think about it, it's a good question.
Exactly. And I think about all the bandmates I've had in the past who I tried to hold on to and tried to help see the light and say, follow me into the promised land. I will deliver you there. Our music is stronger than any one of us. None of them make fucking music anymore.
Yeah.
And the ones that do are in this community, and they're telling other people how it needs to be done and how they should be doing it.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's bullshit. It's about way more than just who's your bass player, who's your drummer, who's playing guitar, who's doing harmonies. It's so much more than that. First who, then what. That's what it's about. I'm in the middle of arranging my band together. I've got a drummer and a bassist and a guitarist right now who have been rehearsing on their own without me, my songs. Okay, imagine you wrote a bunch of Muggs songs, all right, and you had to, and for whatever reason, you didn't know Tony, you didn't know Matt or Todd. You had to create a band that will play your songs, and you're doing it in a, not even the Muggs, you're doing a different genre, a different style than anything you've ever done before. And these people that you've found or who have expressed interest in playing your music are rehearsing your songs on their own without you there. That's what I've got going on right now. And I'm not saying that like, look at me. I'm saying that my whole thing, the experiences in the bands that I've been in has taught me talent is not, it's not all about talent. It's about desire. It's about wanting to be part of something that's bigger than you, and the sum of the parts are the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Does that make sense? So
it does.
I've got, my whole thing is first who, then what. I want people who want to get on the bus that only want to get on the bus because of who's driving the bus and who else is on that bus going with us. And it's, I don't care where this bus is going. I don't care what road we're going down. All I know is I want to be on this bus with these people, because wherever these people are going, I know we're going to end up somewhere great. First who, then what. There's no way you can replace Tony, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. That type of bond, that type of friendship is irreplaceable, man. So he had to transition from playing electric bass and moving over to the Rhodes. Mm-hmm. And he willed himself now, and now he's harmonizing with you. So fast forward 15 years later and think about back in 01 and all those the first word that came to mind was depressing, but that's not the right word. Those somber feelings, those sobering and the intense realism of this is the situation we're dealing with. And now 15 years later, you guys have made several albums since. Okay, you're talking about making a new album where you're going to be pushing your music into not a different direction per se, but expanding your musical palette, exploring your muse, allowing other colors to come into your painting per se.
Yeah, well put.
Okay, can you just look back at that situation now and kind of laugh at it and be like, man, we thought this was going to be the end of the world, but we have grown so much and have gone so far musically together, and we've created something unique with him being able to play the way he plays, and now he's fucking harmonizing with you.
I can't believe it. I mean, it's really shocking, even as I sit here right now thinking about, like, the Muggs were done. There was just no way it was going to happen. Hell, that Tony even survived. That was a huge hemorrhagic stroke. That he's able to talk and walk again is all a testament to his badassness, for lack of a better term.
He's a fighter. He's always been a fighter.
And still is, too. And, and he's still never out of the woods. As well as he looks like he's doing, a lot of people don't even realize, that he had a stroke, because I remember him in the early days. He had a cane, and he could barely get into a car. He had to, like, lift up his leg with the one hand and get his, he couldn't drive for years. Now, his left side is still, or his right side is still screwed up. But so he has to drive with a left foot accelerator, which is unbelievable. He does all the
fantastic.
He does all the Muggs driving. He does everything with one foot. It's great. We're like, we're driving.
You make the paralyzed guy drive the van.
He loves driving. Yep. And it's so funny too, because
you guys are fucking assholes.
I know. No, it's his car. He loves.
That's so
we do train
awesome.
him, and it's
so awesome.
It's so great when he he'll be driving. He's only one-handed, so he can't use one hand. And he wants to change the radio station. Well, there goes the wheel. I'll just turn the volume. Hey, I need the air on. And there's just no wheel. A lot of times. Oh, and even funnier is he sometimes he's smoking pot on the road.
Beautiful.
And Tone's like, hey, hook me up, will you? So I'll pack a little 1E, and I have to. He holds it in his mouth. Oh, he holds it in his mouth. He lights it, and I'm driving from the passenger side. I'm just steering.
That's so awesome.
While because only one hand, so he's smoking, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Hurry up, Tone.
That's fantastic.
While we're on the E-way, I know it's in
all
him and I
sense
are
of the
like
word, that's fantastic. It's fantastical. It sounds like a fantasy.
it's
The
hilarious.
paralyzed guy is driving, smoking weed while you are steering. Oh my God!
If they ever make the Muggs movie, that's definitely a scene that's going to have to start it.
You guys make the Muggs movie. It only has to be 20 minutes long. You don't have to make it a big long project.
Yeah,
but
right. Just
put it out, man. That's so awesome.
And it's really fantastic too, because when you see Tone day to day, especially when I got to go to Europe with him, and he has his struggles day to day, still one-handed. So it's amazing to see somebody, the struggle's real all the time. To get dressed one-handed, to put your belt on one-handed, to put on your shirt one-handed, to cut through a steak one-handed. He's got to, just do it with a fork, like, as hard as hell. His life is still a struggle, but man, where he's come from to where he is now, it's shocking, and it's amazing, and it's inspiring.
The fire department is literally kitty corner from
right
the
on,
house
hearing
here.
him.
So yeah, wow, man. I'm fortunate, and knock on wood here, I'm fortunate that my friends and family are all basically in good, proper health and what have you, as proper as you can be. But I sometimes, this may sound very shitty, I don't know, but take it as you will. People know I have a good heart. I sometimes wish that I had someone in my life that was going through those struggles, because it would be a daily reminder to me. And I give myself daily reminders, be humble, be modest, appreciate what you got, be grateful. I try to every day find 3 things that I'm grateful for and vocalize them. I tell my queen, I appreciate that you're that you're a great cook, and that you care about keeping our house good. Just the small things. But to be gracious and be grateful and have an appreciation for life and appreciation for each moment, because he never saw that stroke coming.
No.
Nobody did. And then it happened, and you think your world's going to end, but then you will yourself into a position where, yeah, like you said, he's still struggling. But I can only imagine that for you and Todd and Matt, when he was in the band, when you guys are on the road and, you're dealing, because even being on the road, even if you're all in good health, it's still arduous. It's still frustrating at times. And, it is a grind. To have that on top of it, it probably makes you appreciate, like, hey, you know what? Tony's dealing with it. If Tony can deal with it, I can fucking deal with anything.
Yeah, that's how I think about it, and that's why I never take anything for granted. I think like you, day to day, man. To wake up another day is just fantastic for me. To, go throw the football last night, or to go on a bike ride. Hell, even work tonight. Things could be worse if I. They could just be way worse.
You can open a beer with 2 hands.
Yeah, I know. Jeez.
So to piggyback on that, all right, because if anyone listening knows the Muggs, they know essentially that narrative. But you had a personal health thing. You went through a panic disorder issue when you were going on with the show, and if you can, man, talk about how that panic disorder fueled your songwriting. Did it open up different avenues of thinking for how you approached your music and your craft?
It did, actually.
And if you don't mind being personal, because that's what we're doing here, what pushed you into that? What pushed you into this panic disorder? Why did you freak out, man?
Well, I've always been a nervous kid. Like, I'm always pacing.
I pace when I talk on the phone constantly.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm that guy. I'm obsessed. I have obsessive OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Is that now? Hold on. Is that clinically diagnosed? Was that given to you by a doctor? Or is that something that you just determined on your own?
I determine on my own.
Have you ever seen a therapist?
No.
I go to therapists.
Oh, right on. See, do you have it?
No. I have what he calls unspecified anxiety disorder.
Wow.
Okay.
I probably have the exact same thing, actually.
And the reason I went to therapy is because quite frankly, I just want an unbiased, objective, professional person to ask me questions that my family, my queen, and my friends either are afraid to ask me or don't know to ask me. I want to dig deeper into myself to find out why I think the way I think and why I feel the way I feel. And if someone is trained to do it and is certified to do it, and thank you, Obama. Everyone wants to rail on Obama. Fuck them, because Obama is the reason I have health care. I'm a musician, all right? And that's another thing I wanted to ask, because Tony had fundraisers done, for him.
This was to send him to California, yeah.
Yeah, so he can go to
For
rehab and get
hyperbaric oxygen treatment.
Right on. See, I use hydroponic oxygen treatment
Man.
on the daily. No,
Legalize it.
Yes, please legalize it. It's been here since before we were. But without those fundraisers, okay, is Tony on quote unquote Obamacare now, or does he have health benefits through wherever he works? I don't know what he does.
I think he's got Medicare or Medicaid.
Okay, either way, so he.
But that's basically
This is what I'm saying, right? Okay. If not for that, he wouldn't be able to get the help he needs, and he's obviously deserving of it, right? So, I didn't realize it, but mental health, professionals are covered with, the Affordable Care Act. So I took advantage of it. It's not that I'm lost and I'm having a breakdown. I need to see therapy. It's just no. I want to go talk to somebody who doesn't fucking know me, and have them ask me questions.
Pick your brain.
Yeah,
and
man.
Make you,
It's not like It's not that I feel like I'm fucked up or anything. It's not even that. I'm alone on an island. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a professional musician. I'm a solo artist. I'm not in a band. I don't have anybody that helps me do anything on my business day-to-day stuff. I want to talk. I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to somebody who can empathize and understand, because most people haven't walked in these shoes. But so I asked you about the therapy thing. But yeah,
I went through a similar thing, and I've always been a nervous kid. I was, I was a late bloomer. As a nerdy kid, I got straight A's in school. Everything was just kind of weird for me. And then when I got to Michigan State, I made the mistake of when I started smoking pot, like around when I was 18 or 19, and then I made the mistake of acid. In the early 90s, acid was everywhere at Michigan State, and that's the last thing a nervous kid needs.
See, my queen, Jackie, she keeps telling me, you need to take an acid trip. It'll expand
your
mind. And I'm like,
don't do it.
Exactly, because I'm already.
People with anxiety
thinking,
should not do
that. Yes. She's like,
mushrooms are okay, but
that's what she says too. This is the first time we've talked about drugs on this. No, but seriously, we can relate, because I'm telling you, dude, you might be a few years older, but we're kindred. You talk about straight A's. I had a 136 IQ when I was 3.5. When I went into kindergarten, I was in kindergarten for 3 weeks, and they said, no, first grade, pump me up. So I was a grade ahead.
So you were that kid too.
Yes.
And
I was the nerdy, awkward kid who got straight A's until I found punk rock.
When you think too much, I know. We're like those thinkers. And
yes.
It's just tough. You can't turn your brain off.
We read. We like sports. We like competition.
Yep.
We like the human endeavor. We want to leave a legacy. So we're concerned about the future. We're concerned about and fearful of the future, right?
Yep.
So I know we're digressing or whatever, but I want to get back to how it fuels your songwriting and everything. But you were concerned about being too real lyrically on with the show. And I know I keep talking about on with the show, but it feels like that was a real turning point album for you, because the foundation for the Mugs was already laid with the self-titled album, and then it took you about 4 years before the second album, and there was a lot of growth in between that with what was going on with Tony, and then we're talking about
and I learned a lot, because it's funny, the first Mugs record was a lot of throwaway lyrics, because I enjoyed the riffs. Like, cool riffs, but I'm singing songs like Need You Baby and, Gonna Need My Help. That was a Muddy Waters song. But, White Boy Blues. I was writing very innocuous lyrics. I wasn't getting deep into the lyrics that I would like to write, because I always wanted to be a writer. On with the show, I took, I finally grew a pair. And, I want to, write personal songs. And specifically... All Around You, there's a song on
that's your favorite.
That's the one which I basically that was the one that I wrote about my problems, about thinking too much and just losing my mind. And unfortunately, On With the Show was we had so much to do in such little time and no money to do it, because we were funding that record ourselves. I was under so much stress, freaking out, had a complete panic attack. And this is 05? This is 07, I think. The first record was 05.
The Mugs was 05. The self-titled
The
record.
self-titled, and I think we did this one in 07. It might have came out in 08, but I think we were doing it. And I was just completely freaking out. One, I was nervous as hell because, with the first record, I was singing about, need you, baby, weird things. The second record, I was writing personal lyrics, and I was so afraid of what people were going to think of, writing a personal lyric. And I'm always self-conscious about my singing. I'm not a singer per se.
Is fear a constant companion for you as it relates to being a creative artist?
Oh, yeah, totally. It is constantly there. But you know what? This next record, well, the last record, Straight Up Boogaloo, was the first record I wrote fearlessly. When I was like, you know what? I'm done being scared. Screw it. If people like it or if they don't like it. God, it took me till I was 42 years old to just say, screw it.
And I feel like
it's a good song. I'm just going to do it.
I recently reached the same epiphany of
finally, better late than never.
Acting with fearlessness, and it's nice that it's. Frankly, you talk about being competitive. It makes me feel good that it took you till 42 because I'm 35 and I finally get it. I'm like, cool. I didn't have 7 extra years.
Right.
That
You
Danny
got 7
had.
more years to.
But no, seriously,
it's very liberating.
Yeah, there's a great book, and this is not just for you, but anyone listening. The 50th Law. It's co-authored by 50 Cent, the rapper, and Robert Greene, who is he's written several books. The 48 Laws of Power, which is an international bestseller, big, very, very big book in the hip hop community. They actually banned the 48 Laws of Power in prisons in this country because prisoners were reading it and figuring out how to gain power and influence while being in a penitentiary. And guards and officers and, the bureaucracy, they didn't like that, so they banned that book. The 48 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction, The 33 Strategies of War, Mastery. Mastery is fucking... Anyone listening to this right now, if you are a reader, buy Mastery. It will change your life. Wow, and if it doesn't...
I want to read this.
I'm telling you. And if you don't read, or if you have dyslexia, or if reading frustrates you because you got to read the same paragraph over and over again to get the thing, fine, fuck it. Get Audible and get the goddamn audiobook. Mastery will make you want to be the best person you can be and follow the inclinations of who you truly are destined to be as a human being. Anyway, but the other book he wrote, The 50th Law with 50 Cent, it's all about fearlessness. The whole thread running through it is fearlessness and not being afraid, being intensely realistic about life, being completely self-reliant, being opportunistic and turning shit into sugar, appreciating the sublime and having an oceanic feeling and understand that death comes for all of us. So you have to have a sense of urgency about how you attack things. It's fucking incredible, dude. And it draws on not only his experiences before he got signed, it draws on his experience when he was a drug dealer and a hustler and whatnot, but also when he got signed to a label and then subsequently dropped after 50 Cent got shot. It's fucking fantastic. It talks about Napoleon Bonaparte. It talks about generals. It's
wow.
I'm telling you, man, if you're a reader,
I am.
Dude, I hate loaning books out. I hate loaning any of my media out because it always comes back damaged or disheveled.
Yeah,
People don't respect it. They'll put their coffee on top of it and shit.
I was just going to say, I just got a book back from somebody that had coffee stains on it. Like,
dude,
how do you get coffee on a book?
And don't dog-ear the pages and shit. Don't rip the jacket. I'm reading a book right now. Whenever I'm reading a book, a hardcover book that has a jacket on it, I take the jacket off because I know it's going to get damaged as I'm reading it. You know what I mean? Like,
right
I have a huge respect.
Should do that. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I have a huge respect for books and whatnot. But yeah, Robert Greene, huge. But the fearlessness part of it, we were getting into that. Talk about how liberating yourself from the fear. Okay, how about this? Better question. What are you so fearful of when it comes to approaching your music and creating something and putting it out there? What are a couple of the overarching fears that you have?
I'm always confident with the riffs, because if a riff if it passes the Todd and Tony test, then I'm just like, cool, it's a good riff and it's going to be fine.
And they're going to own their parts better if they believe in the riff.
Exactly. They're because we're a 33 and a third partnership. They don't want to put out a turd too. So they're my quality control, which is great. It's always the lyrics, I'm always afraid.
I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off, but you keep making me. We're thinkers. 33 and a Third Partnership. Is that your publishing handle as a band?
No, I'm Nefarious P. Bellbottom is my publishing handle.
Awesome. All right.
It should be 33 and a Third.
33 and a Third Music Incorporated. That's pretty sweet. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, but that's what I'm always nervous about is how people are gonna, perceive lyrics, because I like to write like personal lyrics, and sometimes I just like to get esoteric, especially being a big reader. We're both big readers. Like there's a song dedicated to Oscar Wilde and
Nice.
Edgar Allan Poe. I like to drop a lot of literary references, and it just occurred to me one day finally when I was like just freaking out about lyrics. They're like, wow, I listened to Paperback Writer by the Beatles, like they're singing about a paperback writer, and no one even thinks twice about how kind of silly that is. David Bowie's lyrics, I'm like, I'm overthinking it. I should just write the lyrics I want to write, because ultimately people, no one has ever judged me on lyrics. I'm like, why am I worrying? Because I could, you could sing about, rolling a donut down the street, but if the melody's good and the riff's good, no one's going to care. Just rolling that donut, do. I just wrote that just now. Don't steal that.
Copyrighted.
Yep.
Copyrighted. You heard it here first.
Rolling the donut.
I love it.
It's so funny though, and people, that'll probably be my biggest hit of my career. Rolling the donut. I'm going to go home and write that tonight.
Fuck yeah, dude. Don't just say that. Go home and write it. And even if it
rolling
sucks,
the donut.
even if it sucks, explore it, man.
Exactly. But it's funny, and it did make once I broke through as far as not caring. It's not that I don't care, but just not being so sensitive to what people think of my lyrics. A whole world of lyrics opened up for me. Statements I would have never said before.
Give me for instance. What's a lyric that comes to mind that you were really afraid for other people to listen to, that you felt you would be judged on and reproached for?
Born Ugly on the second or the third record, on the Born Ugly record, when I
and that was like a split with what was the other? You released two records because you cut a live record.
Yeah, the Full Tilt was the live one.
Full Tilt, right? Okay.
Born Ugly was a tune when I was scared to death because it's a very political song, and I used the line "Gun lobby heads, Tea Party goons." I'm like, wow. Do I get away with Tea Party goons? Are people gonna? And it's so funny when we recorded that line. Tone actually took his hat off his head and threw it on the floor. It's like, well, we just threw our hats into the political ring.
Nice.
And I was worried because there's a lot of political statements in that song, but ultimately no one ever said anything. And people love the song too. They play it all the time at the Caju, but no one ever said, you went too far, man. You called out the Tea Party and the gun lobby, or I was worried if somebody was gonna, was gonna start a gun debate with someone's gun lover was gonna like argue with me or something like that. Never happened. I'm like, all right, cool. I can say things, and then there's some real esoteric lyrics about Roger Corman movies and. On the second album.
Yeah, you like horror movies.
I love horror movies. So
I can't watch them, man. I get very, very vivid nightmares.
Love 'em.
And I just...
right on.
Yeah.
See? I love my nightmares. I mean, they're scary while they happen. When I wake up, I'm like, I was in a horror movie in my head.
What time do you have to be at work, by the way?
3 technically.
Okay,
where are we at right now?
We're at 2, just after 2 o'clock. So I want to. That's why I'm asking, because we're almost reaching the end of my questions for you. But there's a series.
We've been going at it.
Oh yeah, with 2 hours all just now. I want to. I'm going to ask you this question, and then I have a series of questions that I ask everybody that I want you to answer. But you hopefully, I'm sure the people are cool with you at the Caju, so that if you walk in a little bit tardy, you'll be all right. You've opened. Mugs have opened up for a lot of successful rock bands throughout your career. What is your opinion on what's happening with rock and roll in our current culture, and are you adapting and innovating your music to attempt to reach a younger audience who isn't necessarily they appreciate rock and roll maybe because of their parents and their lineage, but that's not necessarily what they're into? How are you drawing how are you drawing millennials into what you're doing, and what's your opinion on what's happening with rock and roll in our current culture?
Well, as far as the radio goes, there's really nothing happening that's new. There's a band called the Struts out out of England, and they're kind of like the hot new thing. But it's interesting, when the Mugs first started out in our early 20s, we were like the hot young blues rock guys at the time, and now it's 20 years later, and it just seems like yesterday. There's a whole hot young group of kids who are coming in who are rocking. These are like 20, 21-year-olds, 22, and they love, these are the kids that grew up listening to terrible radio, and they're just like, well, this is terrible. They're going back to Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and Cream and the Kinks and the Beatles, and they're loving that stuff, and they're writing this music. So the future is bright. Unfortunately, because radio is such a disaster, these kids will never get on the radio. But there's a like band called Moonwalks. They're amazing.
And these are all Detroit bands.
Yeah.
Okay.
And young kids. They sound like the Velvet Underground meets the Kinks, and there's this whole new crop of kids coming through, which is great. And the Mugs are the old guard now, which is so bizarre, because we used to be the young kids. And
weird, man.
I know. It's
paradigm
like, wow,
shifting.
these new young kids are coming out, and now we're the old men of the scene. But the future is bright for music. Unfortunately, it's never going to get to the radio, or who knows? Maybe things change. What was great was WDET 101.9. Just this week, they changed their programming between 12 and 3 every day. Whatever they were doing, with all the talk shows and stuff like that, they've gone all music between 12 and 3. John Moser was saying, it's like, you people wanted more music. We changed our programming. And what a great show. Now they're playing local bands. They're playing, finally, maybe it's hit a wall where finally the local Detroit public station is finally hearing what the people want to hear or hearing what they're saying, and they just started doing it. It's a step in the right direction, and this just happened this week. And and I love DET, always support them, but this week when they're doing the 12 to 3 thing, it's like, finally, that's a step in the right direction, because they're talking about local at restaurants, local bands, and just what's going on around the world, and it's a step in the right direction. So the future's bright. But people really have to go out on their own and start looking up these bands. People really have to start going out and supporting. You see a band, you like their name, or just look them up. Look them up on Spotify. Look them up, on YouTube. And if you like their sound, go support them.
Live shows, man. Live shows are the thing. Music's everywhere. And the great thing about the internet is that it's leveled the playing field for everyone. But the bad thing about the internet is that it's leveled the playing field for everyone.
It is the double-edged sword.
But the thing is most people think that millennials have ADD, and that's not it. It's that they have incredible bullshit detectors, okay? Because they've grown up with access to all the great literature, all the great music, all the great art, all the great movies, all the great TV shows, and it's on demand in this freemium world that we live in now, this freemium culture, to where they know within 5 to 7 seconds of watching something or listening to something or reading something, whether or not it's bullshit or whether or not it's mediocre, which, okay, fine, there's a lot more mediocre stuff out there, but that means that the cream can really rise to the top.
Yep.
And we've entered into, because of all this, we've entered into this age of authenticity. We're in the beginnings of it. We're seeing it now. You like football. Cam Newton, okay? Did you watch the Super Bowl?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Cam Newton, his press conference after. Everyone dogged on him because he was despondent and was not forthcoming.
They were all over him.
Yeah, but guess what? He was being authentic. He wasn't playing a game of, I'm going to answer the questions and put on a brave face. He was pissed. He wanted to win that Super Bowl. He took that Carolina team and made him fucking relevant because of his talent and because of his dedication. Everyone's ragged on him. Oh, he's a spoiled guy from Auburn. Oh, this and that. He was being authentic. Why did Prince resonate with everyone? Why did David Bowie resonate with everyone? Authenticity.
Yeah.
Authenticity. And why does Bernie Sanders on one side and Donald Trump on the other side resonate with millennials in whatever respects they are? Because they've been the same Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump they've been their entire life. They're being their authentic selves. People want the real. It's less about image these days and more about identity. And because of the internet, we can vet your identity. We can do the research on you. I learned more in an hour before, I've learned more about you since talking to you now, but I learned more in an hour on the internet just Googling your name than I've known in the last 10 years or more than that I've known of your existence. You know what I mean? The internet is a tool that's allowed us to do that. Yeah. So the bullshit gets passed over, but if what you're doing is good, it will resonate with people. And the more that you can make that authentic human connection on a personal level with everyone, one individual at a time. It's not just about entertaining the masses. It's about connecting with an individual and finding their heart and their mind and giving both of those things something that they value. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Right on, man.
Nice.
Let's move on to these questions and we're gonna breeze through this. You'll be out of here before 3, I promise. First of all, if you had to pick one musician, okay, not any of your family members or anything that inspired you, but if you had to pick one musician that every other musician you would never have known of their existence, that any of your musical influences you never would have known their existence, except this one musician who influenced you and your style of playing or just the way that you approach your craft, who would that musician be?
Brian May from Queen.
Right on. Astrophysicist Brian May.
Yes. He's
the nerdy guitar player.
I know.
Imagine that.
I know.
With the big hair.
He's my favorite guitar player of all time. And, Queen's my second favorite band of all time.
Who's your first? Beatles?
Beatles
and Queen. Okay.
Beatles, Queen, then my list gets murky after that. But Brian May is the guitar player I'd like to be. Harmonies, great riffs, great tone.
Unique tone.
Yep. And a songwriter. And a songwriter and singer, too. He wrote a lot of Queen songs that people don't know about.
Right.
Or that everyone thinks that Freddie wrote, everything that he sings, but Brian wrote a third of those tunes.
Right on, man.
Yeah, so Brian May, he's my hero.
What is the most important thing that being in the Mugs has taught you?
To not be a pussy and be creative. That's, because I have songs swimming through my head all the time, and it really took me the Mugs to grow a pair and get on stage and to get into the studio and write and be creative. My dad's an amazing artist with pastels, and my half brother Ryan, he's an amazing artist. He's an amazing tattoo artist, and I always thought I could draw, and I could never draw.
Ryan, where does he tattoo at?
Ryan Methric, Chroma Tattoo.
My brother is Carlos Kowaleski, who works at Chroma Tattoo.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Wow, they work together then.
Uh-huh.
That's hilarious. Do you know Ryan?
No, and shame on me, Carlos, when you hear this, I apologize publicly. I will apologize to you in person when I come to your housewarming party. He just bought a new house. But shame on me, I have never visited my brother at work. He's been at Chroma for a couple of years now. And I've never visited him at work, and he's not done any work on me, but I think I may be done getting tattoos. We're going to see. But
I don't have any. Ryan,
wow, okay.
My brother Ryan's
you made
always
it
say,
42
come on in
years and playing rock and roll, and you don't have a single tattoo.
No, I know. Tone's got one. Todd doesn't have one, but our old drummer Matt has a couple of great ones.
Right on.
But, it does come down to, being in the band has made me not the scared kid that I grew up being.
Right on, man.
So it's nice, even though I have to act. A lot of people think I'm some sort of rock star, which I'm not. I'm just kind of a goofball.
You've reached Danny Muggs. Yes,
I know, it's
Danny
so bizarre.
Muggs.
The longer you're Danny Muggs, the more it takes on.
Don't worry.
More it takes on some sort of gravitas, which I don't consider. But it's just funny, I'm lucky in that capacity.
You're just a dude. We're just dudes.
Yeah.
And people put us up here, and we think we're way down here. Yeah. I feel you. How often do you talk to yourself?
Probably, I don't know. I do all my talking to myself in my head.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, then constantly.
Okay.
I
You
do
don't
it all
out
the
loud
time.
in the mirror?
No. Every once in a while, but no, I don't. Unfortunately, my my conversations are internal, and they're heavy duty too.
Oh, I believe it.
Oh God, it's terrible because not a sentence that comes out of my mouth that I'm trying to censor before I say it. I think like I know even in an interview like this, I'm already thinking of what I'm saying as I'm saying it. Like, was that stupid? Don't say that. That's why I say lots of ands and likes, just because I'm trying
pausing.
to censor myself. I know it's just pausing. Yeah, exactly.
No, and
and
so okay, so you've lost the fear as it relates to your creative work, but you haven't lost the fear as far as saying what you want to say and not being afraid of how it's going to be received. I struggle with that a lot, and something that, God bless her, my mother has always said that I'm really starting to understand and appreciate is, John, you need to listen through the ears of the hearer, and rather,
That's awesome.
And it's not to say to censor yourself or to not tell the truth, but to do it in a way that the hearer will receive it, process it, understand it, and still love you. Even if not meaning that you're in love or or they've said I love you or anything like that, but love just as the energy, the vibe. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They will not be upset with you, essentially. Not that you're afraid of upsetting people, because the truth may set you free, but at first it's probably going to piss you off, right? But to listen through the ears of the hearer, and when you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody, understanding that capacity. All right. What do you tell yourself when you screw up?
Learn from it. I love screwing up. Insofar as I try not to screw things up, but when it happens, I'm like, all right, lesson learned. That was stupid. Because no one's perfect. Anything can happen to anybody at any time. But God, just learn from it and get better. It's even. I always think like sports metaphors. Whereas, if my team loses, and everyone walks out despondent, I was like, oh, we lost. I'm like, we did lose, but we played a tough game. And you know what? Next week we're going to be better because, we all learned the lesson from, I missed that ground ball or, I hit a pop-up. Like, life comes down to sports metaphors. You learn from it and you get better next time. And, our team was terrible to start. First couple of seasons, and then you learn from your things, and we won 2 championships in a row, and we're always in contention. And, it's a sports metaphor, but that's how life is.
It applies.
You take life's punches in the face, and then you harden yourself up to it, and you learn. It's not hard to be a good person in this world. It's so easy.
People make it more difficult than it needs to be.
I know, and it doesn't have to be difficult. God, life is easy. Open the door for somebody.
Right on.
Say hello.
Smile as you pass a stranger on the street.
Yeah, buy somebody a drink. Smile. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right on.
Tip your hat.
What do you tell yourself when you do well?
You can do better.
You know what? Are you familiar with the band Wilson? They're from around Detroit.
Yeah.
I just had their drummer in here last week, Matt
Oh,
Pui.
right on. Those are good kids.
And that is literally the exact same answer that he said.
Really?
When I asked him, what do you say when you do well? You can do better.
Yep.
Humble.
And never, never settle. Because, if something goes well, there's always, something better. But there's a certain satisfaction when something goes well for you. It's like, oh, finally. Because, you're always, especially as musicians, we're always trying to climb to the top of that hill. And
Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the mountain.
Man, Sisyphus is...
I was thinking about knuckle tattoos, when I'm financially free, and Sisyphus fits just very nicely across.
I would actually.
Yeah. Pushing the boulder up the mountain, man. How do you relax?
With my guitar, always. That's, my ex-girlfriend or anyone I know. Even when I'm watching a Red Wings game or watching a movie, I sit down, get out my SG, and just put it on my lap. Even if I'm not playing, I'll play it during commercials, or I'll just strum. That is the best way. Like, I never watch a movie without my guitar in my hand. The only thing I do without my guitar is eat or
Bathe.
work, bathe, and sleep probably.
Right on.
But it's always my advice for up and coming guitar players. They're just like, what advice would you give? I'm like, one, learn tunes. Learn a lot of Beatles songs because you'll learn all the chords and whatnot.
Yeah.
But two, when you're sitting there watching a movie, just put your guitar in your lap and just, strum a G chord, and don't even pay attention to the G chord. Watch your movie, enjoy it, go from G to C. And just, after 2 hours, your hands will, learn those things.
You're programming.
Yeah, and that's amazing because, sometimes, my poor friends, they'll come over watching a Lions game, and I'll be the guy just strumming. But I always strum as lightly as I can because I don't want to, drown out the game or nothing like that. So, but
Why not? It's Lions.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Who's your team? Are they your team?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Totally.
goddamn.
As far as football goes, who's your team?
New England Patriots, baby.
Oh, you love the Patriots?
I love winners. I love Tom Brady. I love his work ethic.
You know what? You and Tony would get along great. Tom Brady's his boy. In fact, we've had this 20-year argument of Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning.
Peyton.
I'm a Peyton Manning guy. It's so hilarious. Me and Tony we've made bets. We've had so many.
And that does it for this episode of Get After It. This has been Danny Methric.
Peyton Manning. That's hilarious. I knew it. If you're a Tom Brady guy, you hate Peyton Manning.
No, it's not even that I hate Peyton Manning. That's funny because Ricky, my best friend, we're both huge Tom Brady fans. But we appreciate and respect Peyton Manning. But the debate is over. The debate is over. The guy has been to 6 Super Bowls and won 4, and he's going to probably go to his 7th. You know that New England is the favorite in Vegas to win the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady's going to miss the first quarter of the regular season.
Deflate gate.
That's fine.
And what about Belichick's spying practices?
That's fine. He was asked in a press conference the other day, is Jimmy Garoppolo going to start Week 5? And his first words, he muttered, "Jesus Christ." That's Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick in an interview. He's just, we're gonna start Jimmy and start 4 games and see where it goes. But when Tom comes back, we're gonna.
I will give you this though. Me and Tony had this argument. It's a 15-year-old argument about Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning, and
it's accurate. That's 15 years old because that's when Tom started.
Yep. And finally, after heated arguments. And I finally do have to admit, all right,
you can't
Tone,
fight a paralyzed guy.
Tone, your boy's amazing. All right, I'll give you that. Tom Brady's amazing. I do give him that. I still will take Peyton Manning. I think he's the better quarterback. He's just on Tom Brady was just on a team that was just stacked.
You know what, man? Peyton's a great game manager. He prepares in the film room the way that, and you know what? If you're listening to this and you're not a sports freak, deal with it. Find another free.
I know, here we are.
Find another free podcast to listen to. But no, something that people don't know about Tom Brady is when the Broncos beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship this year, Tom Brady still went to the facility and practiced every single day for the next 2 weeks as if the Patriots were still going to the Super Bowl. If the Patriots, for whatever reason, don't make the playoffs, he takes every snap at every practice as if they were going to the Super Bowl, because his goal is not to get to the playoffs and maybe we'll get to the championship. His goal is to be ready to play in the Super Bowl every goddamn year, and he does not take time off. He goes to bed at 8:30 every night. He's married to a supermodel. Yeah. Okay? She's probably horny and ready to bang at 10 p.m., but no, her husband's already been asleep
banging
for
at 6:30. Yeah.
See, exactly. You see, anyway. Just the discipline, the sacrifice, the commitment. And this is again back to what we were talking about, where people in our music community, sports ball. Oh, you like sports? Fuck you.
It's
you
art.
know what?
Sports are art.
Why don't you strive for something? Why don't you fucking try to dedicate your life to being something great instead of pretending that you're fucking cool and I can play my guitar.
You go win 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah. Shit.
Go win 1 Super Bowl.
Shit.
Get into the NFL.
So, long story you're saying your advice to guitarists is, and you were talking about playing during the Lions game, but even when you're watching the Lions with your friends, you're playing guitar.
Yeah, doing it for 20 years, always strumming Red Wings games. I love it. And so that's the way I relax.
Right on, man.
When like tonight, I'll be working bartending at the Caju till 2:30 in the morning. Get home around 3:15, and it's right to putting a movie on and strumming for the next hour and a half till I pass out.
What movie are you going to watch tonight?
Green Room, actually. There's this movie about this punk rock band. Just came out. Anton Yelchin. I don't know. You know who he is?
I've heard the name.
He's Chekhov in the new Star Trek movie. He just died recently. 27 years.
That's why
he's
he died in the car crash. Yeah.
Oh, it's really unfortunate, but it's a great movie. It's about which you got to see. It's about a punk rock band that they're on the road. They have no money. They're like siphoning gas, out of people's cars. They're broke as hell. They meet some dude who's like, hey, we got this a bunch of skinheads or something like that. It's on this little compound. We'll pay you $300. Just come in, play a punk rock set, and go. Like, cool, $300. We'll take it. They meet this guy at a bar. They go to this skinhead establishment, and somebody gets murdered in the green room. They witness it, and then shit just goes down. This poor punk rock. It's a great movie.
Is it based on a true story?
No, but it really makes you scared for the places you play for traveling musicians.
Seriously.
I'm like, this is the worst nightmare for a traveling musician. I know, so I have to see how this shakes out.
That's
Patrick
funny.
Stewart's in it. He plays like a
Stewart.
neo-Nazi leader. I'm like, wow, Patrick Stewart against type.
Yeah, he's so funny. Patrick Stewart. He just did that Strongbow commercial, made me laugh my ass off. Who is the most influential person in your life?
Good question. Influential person in my life. God. Because part of me wants to say Tony for inspiration. And another part of me wants to say my dad for inspiration. It'll be Tony.
That's lofty, man. No, I'm not even being facetious. That you play in a band with a guy that's the most influential person in your life. That's pretty. It's lofty.
It's unbelievable what he's gone through, and every time I see him, and I never tell him this, but it's a constant reminder of how fleeting life is, and he's such an inspiration as far as he faces death every day,
We all do. If you're really intensely realistic about life,
that is true.
You never fucking know. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, like we go to Europe and whatnot, and he'll be holding his leg, like, what's wrong, Tony? He's like, yeah, I got a blood clot going through.
Phlebitis.
Yeah, exactly. And any one of those blood clots, if they land in his heart, that's it, or they could cause another stroke. He could have a stroke at any second, at all times, and he's got a disaster. He's basically just got a shadow over his head all the time, and the kid's still got a smile on his face, ready to write songs, play, sing. He's the Muggs manager. We are nowhere without Tony. He does everything. He books all the shows. He talks to everybody. Talks to all the managers. He's the one. If we get like a check in the mail, he mails them out to everybody. He's everything in the band.
And this is a guy who they said may never talk again. And he
never walk again.
And he does all the talking.
He was a dude who they didn't expect to live through the night. Yeah, so, and every time I see Tony, I'm like, damn. And so I look at Tony, I have no reason to complain about anything.
Right.
And which I don't. I'm like, God, I have nothing to complain about. I'd like to make a couple of bucks in this world. If I could just make enough money to pay my rent, I'm always just hustling.
Ditto.
But other than that,
they say Detroit hustles harder.
Life is good. They do.
Well, if of all the lessons you ever learned from Tony, okay, if you had to throw all of them away, but you could only save one lesson that Tony has given you to carry with you for the rest of your life, what would that lesson be?
Live for today.
Right on.
Because he does. And he never takes anything for granted. And it's a lesson I've always known. And unfortunately, live for today gets me into trouble. And so I was like, why not? A couple of beers in the afternoon? Hell, I could be dead tomorrow. Right. It turned me into I do like to imbibe on alcoholic beverages a little more than a doctor would tell you you probably should.
You got a little bit of Mark Maron in you. Man.
Mark Maron.
Mark Maron. Thinky Payne, the comedian.
A lot of people tell me that. He's like, you look like Mark Maron.
Yeah.
Now when I wear my hat, then that's when I get Steven Spielberg.
That's funny. Yeah, I could see that too. That's funny.
I got out of a traffic ticket
But live for go ahead.
But looking like Steven Spielberg. I was like 2:30 in the morning coming home from the Cashew Cafe. I was like speeding a little bit, like 10 miles over. A cop pulled me over, and this guy was kind of hyper and weird. He's like, "What are you doing? Why are you driving so fast?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry, officer. I'm just getting out of work." He's like, "You been drinking?" I was. I'm like, "No, sir, just getting out of work." You know, this is my work outfit I'm wearing right now. He's like, "All right, I'm gonna go check your record right now." And he starts huffing away. Comes back 5 minutes later. He's like, "All right, I'm not gonna write you a ticket because you got a clean record. You know, you look like Steven Spielberg. Have a good night." And he just like huffed away and like, that was just weird. But, I'll take the Steven Spielberg thing.
Yeah, seriously, especially if he gets you out of
I'm an aspiring director,
ticket.
too. I want to direct some stuff.
Why don't you direct the 20-minute Muggs movie that you need to make where you film Tony driving with one hand and smoking pot?
You see? Oh, now that's funny. When I'm holding it.
Yes, I'm telling you.
To film with one hand and...
make Todd do something, for Christ's sake. The drummer can't just sleep. What makes you laugh?
Oh, God, I love comedies. And people falling on the ground is...
Like Tony out of his hospital bed.
Is the funniest. You know, even when Tone wipes out, it's hilarious. But that's my favorite thing, like even on the internet or...
Pratt falls?
I got that from my mom. When someone would trip and fall, it's just the funniest thing, you know, like, or skateboarders going down. God, people falling is hilarious. Even my mom and I were such bad kids. It's like, there's a 20-year-old memory, but I'll never forget it. My grandma, you know, she's in her 60s, and it was wintertime. And she's walking. I was like, "Bye, Grandma," you know. And she walks down the sidewalk and slips and falls on her ass. And when me and my mom should have walked up, "Grandma," we both started laughing our ass off. And then we just kind of walked out there. She's, you know, she was like, "Oh, okay." You know, she kind of laughed. Exactly. She didn't break anything. But man, it was the funniest thing, and we felt like such bad people. Like, "Sorry, Grandma," but people falling is just funny to me. So people falling down.
That's fine.
Even though I'm a movie fanatic and
Sure.
I laugh pretty easy.
Right on. What makes you cry?
Oh God, I am so sensitive.
Ditto.
Like
I'll
cry.
to that point, everyone in rock and roll wants you to be a tough guy.
Yeah,
It's difficult for awkward, nerdy guys like us.
I know.
I don't want to be a tough guy. I want to be a sensitive lover.
Yeah, and oh man, it just takes the easiest thing for me to cry, like some old veteran from Vietnam just got the Medal of Honor from Obama like a week ago. Yeah, totally cried at that story. Like, you know, I cry over soldier stories a lot just because, you know, these people who just getting fired on. A lot of people just either die or, and this guy like flew in back and forth. They saved, I don't know, like 20 dudes that flew into heavy enemy fire. It just breaks my heart. Like someone that badass not going to leave his dudes down, you know. Yeah. And songs will make me cry a lot of times too. I'm trying to think of what song. There's a few of them.
What Beatles song makes you cry?
Ooh, God, Julia on the White Album is so sad. Also, another John Lennon tune. Strawberry Fields Forever is, in my opinion, the greatest song of the 20th century. So if I get in the right mood, I just get so moved by Strawberry Fields Forever that it'll elicit tears. But God, there's and what's the other one too? In My Life, another John Lennon jam. And not that, you know, Paul McCartney's still my favorite Beatle, but you know his songs are a lot more upbeat. But
my parents got me his Paul McCartney, The Light.
That's awesome. I want to read that book. I saw that when I came in.
Yeah, I haven't cracked it yet because I'm still trying to wrap up the book I'm reading now about how animals shaped human history. But yeah, Something, George Harrison's song.
That's beautiful.
It's an A major. A major is like my heart wrenching key.
Right on.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's so easy for me to cry, especially, you know, movies or, you know, human heroics. And
yeah, right on, man. Me too. I'm with you there. Tell me about a time when you were truly suffering, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, well, ultimately, I've lived a charmed life insofar as I've never had a disaster befall me, but the disasters I had around me were terrible. Probably the worst time in my life before Tony's stroke was my mom. She had brain cancer. She had a seizure. She was 47 years old, and it was a 6-month process. Me and my sister had to take care of her, and we were the private hospice at home. She didn't want to be in a hospital, so that was hell. Just, me and my sister were the nurses for my mom. It was terrible what we had to deal with. And it didn't really learn anything out of it, unfortunately. And it's weird because it's not really one of those aspects where it was a terrible thing that happened to you that I learned something from it. Because I could say my acid days when I screwed myself up, took too much acid, and learned never to take acid again. But, I just learned to deal with pain. And I did learn of the fleetingness of life. And, and Tony was there. He was like my best friend through my whole mom dying.
This is before he had his stroke.
This was before he had a stroke, yeah. And the only thing that got me through my mom dying that whole 6 months was the mugs. I'm like, at least I got the mugs. And, a year later, or 8 months later, I got that taken from me. That was the toughest year. I just learned, wow, life is a bitch.
Yeah.
And it's a tough lesson to learn, and it still is. I just lost a couple of friends recently. One was 39 years old. One was 44. The older you get, it's just a shame that this is the new reality. My Uncle Paul died 2 weeks ago. He's the one that turned me on to the guitar. The new reality, the older you get, but that's life. And I just want to keep moving forward, keep creating, keep rocking. Those are the things that make me feel good. And hopefully it makes somebody else feel good. I just want to inspire somebody. I want to leave a legacy God damn it, Danny Muggs was here.
Right on, man. That's awesome. That's so awesome. I normally ask people what the defining moment in their career and their personal life was, but I think we've hit on pretty much every goddamn one of them. I think the audience here can glean from that. How about this one? What is the biggest piece of advice that you've received in your career, and how did you utilize it?
I don't know if it was a piece of advice, but my just be a good person. Going through my life, I realized that nice guys, finish first. It's not hard to be a good person in this world, and. A lot of people think, I have the best attitude and you're always in a good mood, and this and that. And I'm not always in a good mood, I get depressed like everybody else gets depressed. And you have self-doubt and worry and fear. Oh man, that's the worst one. Depression, insecurities. Yeah, things are tough, but you put on that brave face. And when I get around other people, I enjoy. It's other people that make me feel good. It's like if I'm not playing guitar, I like to surround myself with good people. And it's not necessarily advice someone gave me, but it's a great way to get through life is, just be a cool, good person. Start a conversation, ask somebody their name, open, hold a door open for somebody. I love that type of thing. And it's great that I have a bunch of great friends, and Todd and Tony are great for that. My family's amazing. It's nice that I really have no regrets with the people I surround myself with or the family I grew up with. I couldn't. There's not one person I can hassle this asshole did that. God, the only assholes I ever have to deal with in life are an occasional customer while I'm bartending.
Sure.
Hey, Patchouli, give me a vodka tonic. Oh, you asshole.
Hey, Patchouli.
Yeah, that's happened before.
Dude, you should write a song called Hey, Patchouli.
Hey, Patchouli.
Not like Hey, Jealousy, but Gin Blossoms, but Hey, Patchouli. That's awesome.
I know. I've ran into 3 assholes in my life, and he's one of them.
Hey, Patchouli. That's great, dude. Wow, what a great...
I know. It's pretty funny when you think about it.
And what the thing is, okay, is he thinks he's better than you
know.
somehow, some way. But what you do is you take "Hey Patchouli" and you turn it into a fucking song, and you make that your goddamn hit song, and then jokes on that asshole. All right, define success.
Shit, I'm as successful as I could possibly be. Success to me is, well, particularly as a musician, is where you're able to make music that you're proud of, and people have access to it. And we've been very lucky to, like, we're in Europe, and we're kind of a worldwide band, amazingly, even though we're nobodies. We make no money, but we're successful in insofar as there's a lot of people who know who we are, and I'm really happy that there was just a band the other day that came to our show in Dearborn, and these kids had to
Where
show
the hell did you play in Dearborn?
we played behind the Buddy's Pizza. Yeah, in the parking lot.
Awesome.
It was crazy. They have these Friday night.
I'm like, where's
Friday night
this venue
jam
I
sets.
don't know about?
I know. No, it was outside in the parking lot. It was 100 degrees. We had to do 3 sets.
Oh, so it's like being back in the desert.
Exactly.
Was
oh
Paul
my God,
Abdul
it was that
there?
hot. But back in the desert, though, it was only 5 minutes. We had to do 2+ hours.
Christ.
But a couple of kids came in, and I can't remember their name. I just met them, and I have their CD. And they're like, oh, we just want to show you this. And it was them covering a song of ours, Slow Curve. And these kids were 20 and 21 years old. And that was success to me. Like, wow, these 21-year-old kids are here. It was their first mug show. They've never seen us. And they were nervous. Their dad brought them. And they were nervous to meet us. And, they came up. And actually, Dad had to show us the video. It was like, they cover Slow Curve. Like, no way. No one covers Slow Curve. No one covers, and it was just so sweet. I wanted to cry because they showed it to me, and the kids were embarrassed. Like, oh, Dad, don't show them. And they did such a great job. Like, wow, some kids who've never met us before, never seen us, are such big fans of the band that they covered our song and did a great job doing it. That's success to me. That's it. I don't care. I could make penny one playing music, but that someone likes your song enough to practice their ass off and learn it, and to play it for their friends, and say this is by a band called the Mugs. That's it. I've made it. That's all I need in the world.
That's them essentially helping create the legacy that you want, is for the work that you create to live on.
That's exactly it.
Longer than you. Yeah, man.
When I cover ZZ Top or Rory Gallagher, Savoy Brown, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, when I cover those things, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, I consider myself that link in the chain, and I always say it before I do the song. It's inspired by John Lee Hooker. It's called Leanin' Blues. I always say it every time I play it because I want the audience to know, John Lee Hooker, remember that name. He inspired me so much. This is by John Lee Hooker, or this is a song inspired by John Lee Hooker, Detroit's greatest blues musician.
He's from Detroit? This is my ignorance.
Well, he's from Mississippi, but he came up here for the jobs and did most of his recording in Detroit.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah, he's technically a Mississippi cat, but exactly,
dude. He steals that scene in the Blues Brothers, man.
Oh my God, that's so great. I love the Blues Brothers.
Hell yeah, dude. I started taking Wing Chun Do lessons this week, the martial art.
Wow.
And we were talking. Somehow the Blues Brothers came up, and we were talking about someone eating fried chicken, and I said, "Give me 4 fried chickens and a Coke."
And a Coke.
Yeah, dude, yeah. What's next for the Mugs?
New record.
When?
Actually, I just talked to Tony this week. Actually, it's 5 songs are written. Me and Tony have been getting together for like songwriting sessions. I'd like to do like an 8-song record and maybe like 2 covers, like we did for Straight Up Boogaloo. But we're kind of getting lazy because I work nights and Tony works during the day. So I'm like, all right, Tone, let's book studio time in September. So that'll put the iron under our asses to really start getting together. Because if we book the studio time, then we'll get stuff together. So I'm hoping studio for 2 weeks in September, and maybe late October. I'd love a Halloween release in some sort of capacity if we can.
I mentioned Robert Greene, who co-authored the book with 50 Cent. In his book, 33 Strategies of War, he talks about doing something called placing yourself on death ground. Okay. I'm not sure how familiar you are with history or whatever. Cortez, who conquered the Aztecs, okay? This is in the chapter, but he talking about how when they sailed to South America, the crew was essentially on the verge of a mutiny, and Cortez ordered all the ships be run aground and burned. And it was, okay, we're stranded here now. We either conquer the Aztecs, who outnumber us 20-1 or whatever, or we die.
Wow. I didn't know that
And
story.
guess what? They conquered the Aztecs because they had no other choice. So when you're talking about booking the studio time, this is another thing in the 50 Cent Robert Greene book is move before you're ready. The reason that my queen and I got this house, okay, we got this house when I was getting, quote unquote, essentially fired from the Coffin Cats, okay, and my steady income, again, quote unquote, because there's no thing as steady income. There is no job security in this world we live in. The world changes too often. I said, honey, we're going to get in this house. She's like, what about your job? I said, honey, if I have a mortgage payment hanging over my head, I'm going to figure out how to make money. But if we don't do this now, I'm going to use every excuse I can to live at my folks' house still. You know what I mean? You move before you're ready. So you're talking about booking.
Move before you're ready. I like that term. So that's exactly what we're doing.
That is exactly what
like,
you're
Tone,
doing.
let's just book it, and then
It'll force you to
That's
act.
the fire under our ass that we need, exactly.
Because if you wait to be acted upon, you will be acted upon. That's Stephen Covey's Seven Habits.
That's great.
Readers, man.
That's how I'm doing it.
Where are you going to be recording it?
There's a dude named Adam Cox. He's amazing. He's in a band called Wasabi Dream, and he also plays in one of Todd's bands called Octopus. Keyboard
I've heard
player.
of Octopus, yeah.
Yeah.
They did something on August 8th of 2008, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I
they've
think
been
they played
around
a show
for a
at
long
Smalls,
time.
and it was a big 888 thing. you know?
Yeah, you're exactly right, actually. And he's got a great studio. He did an amazing job on the Straight Up Boogaloo record. It was the first time we worked with him. Mm-hmm. And his new studio's in Hamtramck. So actually, that's probably what I'm going to do after I leave this thing is just call Adam and say, all right, Adam, what do you got available in September? We're moving before we're ready?
Don't, though, because based on this conversation, I cannot tell you how badly I want to work with you. And before you book that studio, we'll talk offline about it. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. When this is going on
I didn't know
public
you did
record.
recording.
Dude, I have a degree in audio engineering.
Wow.
I produce, I arrange, I write, I consult, I play multi-instruments. Yeah, dude, that's what I do. Yes.
We'll have to talk about this then.
Yes, because especially with the holistic way that I approach recording and how I let the artist be the artist and just do everything I can to get out of their way and make their music better for them, not for me, and what my preconceived notions are. Because I know you had, based on what I researched with the show, the engineer kind of looked at you like you had lobsters coming out of your ears because of the suggestions you were making and whatnot. There's nothing out of left field with me.
Right on.
So, yeah, we'll talk.
I had a tough time on the Born Ugly sessions, too, were tough. That was when I was getting looked at by the engineer and lobsters were coming out.
So, new album coming soon for the Mugs. Right on. Are you guys performing anywhere?
No.
Or are you just going to do the writing and then...
Yeah, we're laying low for the time being. Tony and his band Dude, they're doing a bunch of gigs right now. And so it's perfect time for the Mugs to lay low, record a record. Then we're gonna hit it hard. Last year was so ass kicking. Like we did so many gigs and I just almost like we took 2016 off, which I'm
right on.
I'm glad. I needed that. I needed the mental break. We were for 10 years we're just like mugs, further, and I finally hit the wall. But now I'm back. I'm excited again.
Right on, man. That's good. What's next for you personally in regard to your growth as an individual?
Doing lots of reading, and also I'm getting into directing. I want to be I directed a music video. Actually, me and my friend William Hind. We did the 6 to Midnight video that's on YouTube for the Mugs, and it's actually a song that's it's 2.5 years old, but I've had this video in my head for forever, and I'm one of those nerds who watches all the commentary tracks on movies. I'm a huge horror movie fan, and and I'm writing a screenplay right now for a horror movie set at the Kaji Cafe at the bar I work.
Sweet.
And it's going to be a short movie too. It's not going to be like an hour and a half type of thing, but it's probably going to be like 15 minutes or something like that. Because short horror movies are kind of like the future, you know. It's kind of, that's how you get your foot in the business. And yeah, I want to. Besides writing music, I want to direct and write.
You're a Spielberg doppelganger. So.
I am a Spielberg doppelganger. That's hilarious. But yeah, writing and directing is my next thing outside of music. Just, you know, I love.
You're leaving your comfort zone.
I am.
And I think that just for anyone listening, that's important for anyone's growth as an individual, is to leave your comfort zone. Nothing great ever came out of a comfort zone.
Exactly.
So
nothing great ever came out of a comfort. You're exactly right.
Before I ask the last question, where can people find you and reach you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm just Danny Muggs on Facebook, you know, or themuggs.com. MUGGS. I always tell people because, you know, if you look up MUGS, you're just going to find a bunch of coffee cups.
Which some people need. So
yeah, right. But yeah, themuggs.com. All our shows are on there. Everything coming up. Links. I think we're on Spotify. We're on... Tony's got us everywhere. Bandcamp.
And just so everyone knows, Bandcamp is if you're going to support an artist and you want to buy their tunes digitally, Bandcamp's the way to go, because Bandcamp pays the artist fairly and they do it promptly.
You're right.
Unlike the other streaming sites, and especially iTunes, they don't hold your money for months and months at a time. If you really want to support your artist and you want to do it digitally without buying a physical product from them in a live show or directly from them for their website, Bandcamp's the way to go. So,
right on, yeah. So we're all over those things, and Metro Detroit kids. I work at the Caju Cafe bartending, so come up, have a drink with me anytime, and
right on.
That's where I reside Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Righteous. Last question, and then we're gonna get out of here. What advice do you have for those listening who have a passion and want to get after it?
Create. Do it. Even if you're not in the mood to do it, just do it. Always keep a pen and paper by you. You know, write something down. Don't be lazy. Don't be somebody who 10 years from now just says, oh, man, you know, I always wanted to draw, but, you know, never did it. Or I always wanted to play guitar. You know, I got a friend right now who she has an acoustic guitar, wants to play all the time. Every time she goes to a show, it's like, I want to play. You know, she got an acoustic guitar, never ends up playing. You know, a year and a half later, I'm like, come on, you know, you're not going to, it's not going to magically happen. You have to sit down and actually do it. And finally, you know, after 3 years, she's sitting down and learning her chords. Like, all right, let's do it. I'm like, see, you just lost 3 years though, you know, but now you're on it. Better late than never. But create, you know, just, you have to do it. Even if it's, you know, drawing until, you know, till it's bad, till it gets good, or, you know, it always takes 2 years to do something, you know, to go from 0 to 3, you know, in order to get to that 10. And I'm nowhere near where I'd like to be as a guitar player, but I just keep pushing and, you know, hopefully I'll get there eventually.
Right on, man. This is, you know, I've always wondered about you, and not trying to, you know, be up your butt or whatever, but I've always wondered about you in the Mugs, because your names are heralded in this community, and even though it's not a genre or a style that I gravitate toward, I have respect for all musicians that are great at their craft and are talented and are humble and that have something to say and something of value to add. And after the almost 3 hours we've spent talking, not getting up from our chair.
I can't believe it. I know. It went by like that.
Know, I feel as though we're fast old friends, and I'm really, really glad that we did this, man.
Me too. You did a great job, John.
Great questions,
that's not
even
man.
A
nice
job.
work.
We're just talking, man.
I can't. We honestly have been sitting here for 3 hours.
We're just talking. And
I haven't moved.
And you're going to be late for work because it's just about 3 o'clock. So we'll
let's
get out
rock.
of here. Danny Methric, thank you so much, man. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. Till next time, y'all. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Danny Methric of the Mugs. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share this episode across your social media platforms. Word of mouth is huge. I'd also love to hear about what resonates with you, so send an email to getafterit@therealjohnkay.com. That's the RealJohnKay.com. And tell me what you liked, or tell me what you didn't like, because feedback is the breakfast of champions, and breakfast is the most important meal of the morning. I'm excited to announce that the podcast is now on iTunes. So, iPhone users, you can subscribe using your podcasts app by going to My Podcasts and hitting the little plus sign at the top of the screen, select Add Podcast, and enter the URL getafterit.libsyn.com/RSS. The next episode of Get After It will feature Don Slater, bassist of Detroit thrash metal band Battlecross, one of the fastest rising metal bands in the United States. Until then, you get after it.